Oh man, Magnus
That's
is
a
going to be
lot.
so upset. Yeah, Magnus is going to be so upset. And I just realized the easiest solution to this, because CrossFit is so confusing to everybody, that we can just make it very simple. Okay, this is my proposal for Greg and Magnus. Actually, you know what? They don't even have to be in the same place for this challenge to happen. The rules are very simple. You have 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes, and the quest is to do as many push-ups as you can for 2 minutes.
For 2 minutes.
Oh.
Well, we shall send this video to Magnus and see if he accepts next challenge. So we will clip this. If someone on Twitch can clip this part of the stream, and we are going to post it to Magnus whether he accepts the challenge of Pro Chess League Commissioner Greg Shahadi. And if he doesn't accept it, he will be kicked out of the Pro Chess League. That's obvious.
That's obvious. That much is obvious. Yeah. Hello, everybody. This is GM Jesse Cry, and I'm here with Anna Rudolph. And we're going to be covering the games today. And Anna, why don't you start just by giving us a rundown of how this works and what we're looking at today?
Jesse, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here
Yeah.
commentating with you. You didn't say it, but you're just so humble. Jesse is not just a grandmaster, he's also a writer. So I'm very honored to be here with someone much more intelligent than I am. And today we are going to be looking at the Pro Chess League, second week of the Pro Chess League, the Eastern Division. The first match has just started. It's between the Mumbai Movers and the Norway Gnomes. So these are the teams of Vishy Anand and Magnus Carlsen. The two are not playing today because they are in Vaikanze, very focused on the last rounds of the Tata Steel Chess Tournament, but their teammates will fight for them. And we are about to see the very first games once we are ready with our chessboard. But in the meantime, let us know on Chess.com and on Twitch as well. Who are you rooting for? Is it the Indian team? Is it the Norwegians? Let us know.
Yeah, okay. So, right, we have all these beautiful games going on, and they're starting off really fast and furious. Well, why don't we start off with the game with the famous Simon Agdestein?
Yeah, we should definitely start with the former trainer of Magnus Carlsen. He did not play last week, but now he is strengthening the team of the Norwegians. So last week, Magnus Carlsen played and Arjan Tari as well. Today they have a rest day, but they decided that they needed to focus on the remaining rounds of Vaikanze. There we have Jon Ludvig Hammer and Simon Agdestein on the top boards. What do you think about the position, Jesse?
I don't like Agdestein's position at all, because the knight on a5, the only hope that it really has is to take on c4, but it looks like taking on c4 will probably always be a disaster, especially now after bishop d6. So if white's going to put the queen probably on somewhere like h4, and the knight on a5 just seems completely out of place, right? And
Yeah.
I don't see how. So something already has gone dramatically wrong for Agdestein. It's not
But
lost or anything.
As early as move 13.
Right, right. Well, this is a reason people like the Catalan. It's very easy for black to fall into trouble. And Kunta plays a very simple move, queen d2, just manually preventing d takes c4.
That's interesting. I thought that he was aiming for queen h4 if you already went to f4 with the queen.
I agree, and maybe here Agdestein could play bishop b4, which is what he did, and maybe he couldn't have missed this. And the point is that a3 now would be met by knight takes b3. And if cd, then you can just play knight takes d5, I presume, and then you're more than fine. So
maybe now then it's already a complicated position, and queen d2 was not the best move for white. Do you think that this was an inaccuracy?
It still seems like white should have a way to get an advantage. For example, like knight e5 now, right? And then if dc, we can at least preserve our structure and hold everything together. But not nearly as nice as it used to be.
Yes, I agree with you. I really like your move, queen h4.
And he
Now
just
he's
went
going
back.
back.
He just
This
went
is
back.
is it like admitting that queen d2 was not the best?
Well, if bishop d6 happens, then you can go queen h4.
That's true.
Right?
Do you think that Agdasstein will repeat?
He won't get a draw. I don't know. I mean, if Magnus should repeat, yeah, but he doesn't. And now, actually, well, so the point is that at least at the moment, White is now prevented from c takes d5 because of bishop takes c3. So White has to solve the problem of the very simple threat of d takes c4, right?
Yeah.
And he really missed a chance actually with queen d2, because now the knight, right? The knight on a5 will be active as long as black can get pressure on c4. If we could have taken on d5, then the knight would just be totally out. So White definitely looks like created some problems for himself here, drifting into some time pressure. So doesn't look good. Yeah.
Let's see another game as well. What do you think about Jon Ludvig Hammer's position? He, by the way, guys, you should know that Hammer is not only playing today, but he's also streaming. So if you want to follow closely the games of Jon Ludvig Hammer, he's streaming his own games today for the Norway Gnomes in English. Check his channel out on Twitch, and we will focus on the entire match between these two teams, and of course later on the rest of the games as well.
I have to admit, I'm having trouble finding the Hammer. He's
GMJ.
That's right. That's right.
Like he likes to leave out the vowels from the words.
Yeah.
He's playing against Abhishek Kelkar, Livestrong 04.
Oh, a total mess of a position. So, big moment for White now, right? It looks like maybe he could play knight e4. Like that would be a question. Yeah, White has several options, really. I like knight e4 best. That looks like a pretty good move to me.
It looks very attractive. Instead of retreating with the bishop, you attack the d6 bishop. And in case of h takes g5, knight takes d6, White looks very active.
It's a true mess, though, right? Knight e4, you could play... First, you could just get a tempo with rook c8, or you could play bishop f5 first. Right? To pin the knight on e4. Yeah, that's complicated. I don't know. These positions, I think, the only thing I know about these positions is it really is a question of whether White can break the blockade on d6, right? If he can't, then Black is just going to be fine, maybe even better because of moves like f5. And really the move h6, presumably, right, basically says you're not going to be able to play knight e4. Yeah.
I think our community is worried about the time situation that they can't see. So we will give a moment to Jesse, because it's not so easy to just change the window. I can be with you guys in the meantime.
Oh, you don't have the time. Yes, indeed. I can fix that.
After h6, bishop h4, I really liked more knight e4, your option. I feel like this is going now very much in Black's way. The bishop on h4, I don't think is very well placed. It's pinning the knight on e7. But after f5, I was going to say f5, and Black can at some point play g5 and f4. That bishop will be trapped.
Yeah.
And if you are afraid of knight takes g5, you can even take on f3 first and then push g5. So this is very dangerous for White already. Looking good for the Gnomes. Now on the other two boards, but I'll lead Jesse. I'll lead Jesse to switch board.
Yeah, I've just fixed this situation, and Let's see here. Great. I think I fixed it. Yeah.
It looks beautiful.
All right, good. Which game would you like to look at?
The other two boards between the Norwegians and the Indians. So that is Torbjørn Rindal Hansen against Abhimanyu Puranik. Vincent Masuka and Abidavi, their nicknames.
Great. Oh, total big fight.
All games are so crazy in this match.
Yeah, big fight.
I like that. I love this. So, what is the pawn count here? That's what I always start with. Important.
Well, it really looks like poor Mr. Hansen's getting crushed here, doesn't it? I mean, we've got the better rooks. I think we're just up a pawn, unless I'm counting wrong. And the D3 square is looking very tender. The only thing black might want to worry about is some kind of knight b5, but I honestly don't think that's going to work. So this just looks lost. And this would be, you know, this is the board from the Gnomes who has to perform well today, right? He's the guy who might get the hammer down on him. And we should say, you know, I think you mentioned that Magnus is not playing today. He's playing, of course, in Tata Steel, which is sad for us, but I totally understand, of course. And so today, his teammates are going to have to perform without Magnus, right?
Yes.
They're going to have to perform without Magnus.
A lot of pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, a lot of pressure.
And probably Magnus is watching, so even more pressure on the Norwegians. I just thought that since Magnus and Vishy are both in Vaikanze on a rest day, how funny it would be if they actually just sit down in a restaurant and play their board game, their board one game there in person. But I guess they have better things to do on their rest day. They already played against each other just a few days ago in Vaikanze.
Yeah, Anna, why don't you tell us a little bit about the rules? And I have to fix the time again. I don't know. Sure. I don't know why.
That the clock disappears all the time.
The clock disappears, and I don't really understand why. But I'm going to fix that.
Yeah. For those of you just tuning in, this is the Pro Chess League. And if you missed the first season, you don't know what you have missed, but be here for every match of the second season. So we started just last week, and it's basically every week. The best teams from all over the world are competing, including the elite players, the top 10 players. Almost all the top 10 players have their teams. Loads of grandmasters, 2,700 grandmasters. The rating average of every team is 2,500 every match. That's the maximum they can have, but they almost always reach it. So that's a very important rule in the Pro Chess League, that it doesn't matter how many strong players you have, the rating average of the 4 players should always be below 2,500. This is to avoid that you have a team where the top 4 players in the world are competing on the 4 boards. So this, I think, is a very important feature in the Pro Chess League. And also that the teams should be from the same city. You cannot just register anyone. You can have one free agent, but the rest of the people, the rest of the players should be from the same city.
Right. So that's a good rundown. I think this game is lost. Let's call this game lost.
All right. So that's a win for... Oh, wait a second. What is happening? Well, what? I'm not understanding Queen C8.
Queen C8, I think you just wanted to get out of the way of things like Knight B5 and to tell White that he has absolutely nothing, which I don't think he does.
B6 pawn. Why did he do that?
Maybe you're right. Maybe it's just a total blunder.
I don't understand. I mean, you were a healthy pawn up, and now it's not just that you give back the pawn, but White's pieces are suddenly active. D5 knight hanging, the rook is nice on D6.
You're totally right, yeah. I trusted I trusted black when he played queen c8.
Whoa, this is
And what do you do now, right?
turn of events.
Yeah, the bishops are strong. Oh, you're absolutely right. It's terrible now.
With such a position, the position opening up for the bishops, as Jesse mentioned, this looks now suddenly bad for black. Just 2 moves, and now it's the Norwegians who are winning on this board. What about the rest of the boards? Because they will need to perform, the Indian team, on the rest of the boards.
By the way, I still think Rook d1, maybe he could have played something else, because Rook d1, I'll say it's probably still roughly equal. But let's take a look at the other boards. Maybe beginning with the famous Hammer. Complete change in the position. But Hammer doing great. Like we said, White was not able to crack d6, right? And the Hammer got in f5. And look at White's poor king. The bishop on h2 has become completely terrible. The pawn on d5, right, the pawn on d5 is going nowhere. Knight on c3 going nowhere. So huge, I don't know, what do you think? I think it's a big advantage for black.
I think the same. So White did not lose the bishop, but it looks like it's half lost on h2. It's a very passive piece.
Right.
And e4 is a protected pass pawn that we would all love to have. So very bad piece on h2. It's like a piece down, and nice pawn structure. Space advantage, very active pieces for black. I think this goes for, once again, for the Norwegians, this point.
Right, though the last move was a little controversial, basically allowing White to have played d6. Instead of that, White lost his mind and played g4, which is very hard to believe.
Going all in. Abhishek Kalkar, g4.
Yeah, I don't think you want to do that. I assume now...
A trick, f takes g4, f5. But even then...
Because, right, the best you can do is you can play gf5, and then we're just going to play knight e7, right? Nothing has really changed for you in that situation.
Exactly. So black is doing very fine, not capturing on g4. You don't need to take that pawn, just keep the h2 bishop dead. And as Jesse mentioned, if g takes f5, a knight will appear on f5 later for black. Very nice outpost. This is looking very good for black. What about the rest of the boards? Let's just go through them very quickly because they are running short on time. Guys, remember that this is starting from 15 minutes. They are using up their time already.
Right.
Addenstein. Well.
That could go either way, right? That could go...
He's looking like he's holding this position. Though he's just now sacrificing a pawn, but was not captured. What do you predict in this position as a result?
You know, in time pressure, you have to believe in the knight. But I don't know. I think it could go either way, you know. And actually, you'd also have to believe in Agdestein's time advantage, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. What if we just very quickly look at the remaining boards as well, just to try and evaluate how the match is looking so far?
Sure. So, yeah, what we're looking at, so we've got the Hammer, and he's looking like he's winning.
Yeah.
We've got
Agdestein, maybe, well, as you said, he's got the knight, so good chances for some tricks and better time management. And board 3 and 4 for the Norwegians. I think Hansen is now looking winning already, because the position has opened up even more for the bishops.
Well, and he's up a pawn now.
Yeah. So from a pawn down, suddenly he's a pawn up. With a pair of bishops enjoying the open diagonals. This is now a sad turn of events for the Indian team. And the last board. And guys, remember, in the first round, it's board 1 against board 4. So this is board 1 versus board 4. Diptayangosh. is the strongest player today for the Mumbai Movers, and Elam is a very young player. He is therefore might be underrated. He's 1900. Well, that was his September rating to start with. Now he has higher rating, and he's just a very dangerous, young, talented player from Norway. But he doesn't have time.
He doesn't have any time at all.
Maybe this doesn't matter at all. Very talented and dangerous.
So really what's going on with the Gnomes is they have two players who are just vastly underrated, or I mean lower rated, and they have to perform today or they're just lost.
Yes, exactly. It's not easy, and it's always a question: what is the best strategy? Do you want to have 3 very strong players and 1 lower rated, or four players of a similar strength? We see all these different strategies that the teams come up with, and I don't think there's a recipe for winning.
Right. I think one recipe is you get Magnus. You get Magnus on your team, and then you have a good shot at it.
One. By the way, anyone worrying about not seeing Magnus today, don't worry, because other top players will be here, including Hikaru Nakamura. He did not play last week, but today he will make his debut. He's playing in Gibraltar, so he has a game to play right now. And then after dinner, he's just going to go and play online. I think it will be like 3 a.m. in Gibraltar when he has to play.
All right. So look, they are Hansen. Oh, wow. Hansen is winning, but it's messy. This is the kind of thing where the lower rated player can muck it up. I mean, anybody can muck it up, but the knights are starting to do their dance over there, and it's not going to be easy for white to do the breakthrough. Now, the good news is that Hansen just has more time. F5.
I like that move.
Really? Oh, man, 93. There was 95, too, I thought might have been possible.
It was a mess, but I like that he is brave.
So, knight F4, I think. Oh, queen H6. Though, this is spicy. So, bishop F5 will lose to rook G2 now.
And rook H3 instead of bishop F5?
Right, rook H3 looks correct, and you're going to have to go crazy with things like rook G2 and rook C2, but it shouldn't work.
I'm praying that it doesn't work. I was thinking whether after rook takes G2, can I just not take it?
There it is, rook H3.
We shall see it. What if rook takes G2? Would you guys take that rook and allow a couple of checks, or...
I think it's not that many, though, because you take on G2 and then go king F1. After rook takes c2. He
goes king h1.
Very good, yeah.
So that's it, isn't it? Okay, rook takes h2 or rook g1, but...
Oh, check.
It's a check.
It's a check.
Yeah, rook takes h2 was perhaps his last chance, but even then it was just a few more checks. Well played by the lower-rated Hansen, winning for the Norwegians.
Agnestein won, and the Hammer is still playing.
Okay, so 2-0 for the Norwegians. Agnestein won, so you were right about the knights.
Yeah, I think I was right about...
It was like slightly worse, but he had the knight and more time on the clock, so that was all.
I really like this endgame. This is interesting. So white is, of course, down several pawns, but he's betting that his pawn on g6 is going to give him enough compensation. And he also has very little time. So this is actually very dangerous because we're going to take on g7 and play f5. And then how is black going to get play?
So this is 2 pawns up for black, but as you mentioned, the g6 pawn can actually compensate for all that because it's going to queen faster than the rest of black's pawns.
Right, and he's got a friend who's going to come back him up.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't look good at all.
This is the moment when we wish we could just tune in to Hammer's stream and hear him talking about this position. You guys can do it. You guys can do it.
He's probably saying, I shouldn't be streaming. I'm getting distracted. I'm getting distracted. And now, this is exciting. I would be really frustrated. So he took the pawn on a2. White's going to take on g7. And the e-pawn is going nowhere, right? Oh, he took on b7. Terrible.
I don't understand that move. Like, wasn't the strategy to push the f and e?
Yeah, it was. It was. And so now black can play rook f3 and at least get that terrible f-pawn off. And now it's only black that's playing for a win.
Didn't white have the option to play king g4 at least to hang on to the
Right? Right?
I think white is now losing the thread, and he also doesn't have time. This is lost.
Yeah, this is lost. Rook f6, very simple and strong. And just, yeah, e3. Easy. Now it's easy.
Well, white had the chance, but he misplayed it.
So that's going to be a huge win for, oh my God, the Norwegians destroyed. Yeah, they destroyed here.
4-0?
He doesn't even bother taking the pawn on g6 because it's totally useless. Black wins. Wow. Wow. Okay. Good.
Wow.
So let's go and...
Oh, wait a second.
This says that Mumbai is
Somehow,
2. Yeah, what happened?
is that possible?
How is that possible? I think that's wrong.
Agdestein didn't win. He lost.
Oh.
So it's 2-2 because who else won on the Indian team? Now I'm confused. I thought that the Norwegians were winning, and now we missed one of the games that was... I don't know. It's our bad. One of the games must have turned that we declared winning for.
Right. Yeah. We must have done it. So Hansen won though, right?
Yeah.
And the Hammer won. So what did we miss?
Agdestein lost. Oh, and Elam, the board 4 lost to the board 1 of the Mumbai Movers. Okay.
Right. Okay. Good.
Yeah.
All right. So we have our first match and we have a tie. And now we're going to have Delhi and Oslo, right?
Yes. So today, last week actually, the two Indian teams played against each other. It was a very hard-fought draw, 8-8. And this week, Mumbai Movers and Delhi Dynamite faced the two Norwegian teams. So that's another interesting matchup. Delhi Dynamite versus the Oslo Trolls. Salem Saleh is a new player in the team of the Delhi Dynamites. Very strong first board, facing in the first round Johannes Hoog.
Right. I see what I have to do.
Johannes H against Arabic Falcon. That's Salem Saleh's handle.
Yeah.
He's the #1 player of the United Arab Emirates, their one and only grandmaster.
So that looks like a draw. Unless something magical happens here, right? I don't see how black could possibly win this. Yeah, that's an easy draw. And so then we have board 2. White wins. Haldorsson beat Suri.
Good pronunciation there. Yours is better than mine.
Haldorsson. And then we've got Mikhailov and Grover. What is going on there? So
Haldorsson won his game against Vayap Suri. That's 1-0 for the team of the Oslo Trolls. And Salem Saleh drew with Johannes Hoog. Very good result for the underdog. Johannes Hoog, he is board 4 for the Oslo Trolls, and he has just made a comfortable draw versus board 1 of the Dynamite.
Yeah. So, what do you think about this game with Mihailov? It looks like White should be winning, but it's kind of technical, and he's thinking about it on this move.
Do you think he's trying to to build this mating net?
Yeah.
Like, of course, if the knight was on e4, that's mate. But I think he realized that it's not so easy to get to that position, and the f4 pawn would be hanging. If you drop that pawn, you don't have a mating. Oh, well, no, depends. Well, you should give a check as a black. I'm just trying to think like knight f2 shouldn't be the move, but in that case, I guess black will give a check on b4 and then take on f4.
Yeah, so he's got to figure out what to do, and rook h7, that doesn't make that much sense to me. And you know what I think black could think about here? Oh, it doesn't work. I was thinking knight f4, e5, but then black has, or excuse me, white has king c5.
Well, yeah, it's important that the rook would be hanging. Black has no time to capture the knight on f4, but that's a tactical motive to have in mind, of course. Like if the rook moved in this position somewhere farther, not on
Right.
because doesn't he have not time to move it right now? Like, is white threatening something after rook h7? I don't see...
Right, I don't know what rook h7 did.
I don't see the difference. Like, what does he want? Why rook h7?
Well, I think for one, the knight was attacking the rook, so he had to leave.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess he just wants to keep the 7th rank. He doesn't want to play rook h6.
Yeah, and black, you know, maybe black should just play something like rook b8, and then you're at least have a threat of knight f4. But it's very unpleasant for black because he's not really doing anything, right?
Yeah.
Actually, one cool thing about rook h7 maybe is to stop g5, because on g5 white could play rook h6. That could be a thought for him.
Oh, okay, so that's why he went to h7. That makes sense. Yes, you're right.
So imagine like black plays something like rook b8, and then maybe white plays king e4 just so that knight f4 doesn't happen. Oh, he played knight f4. Isn't that a blunder? Because now I'll play knight f4 myself.
Yeah, I thought. What does he want? Knight takes e5, king c5?
Maybe, though, he is thinking that he can steal all of white's pawns.
Oh, okay. He's giving up the knight.
He blundered king c5 and it's all over.
But maybe it's what you said, that now he wants to take on b2 and then go for the g4 pawn.
Good. Yeah, that is clever.
Maybe this is actually interesting because you need to move the knight and then king g5 or rook g2. Depends on what white does with the knight.
Yeah, white needs a good move. But maybe a move like knight, it looks a little weird, but knight h3 would at least prevent the king from coming over.
That's true. But maybe then just rook g2?
Yeah.
It's just so difficult to hang on to that pawn.
It is, yeah.
By the way, guys, those of you who are wondering in the chat if Nihal Sarin and the other Indian players are going to play for their teams today, unfortunately not, because they are playing in Gibraltar. So today, the round of the Pro Chess League is clashing with the Gibraltar Chess Festival, especially in the Eastern Division. So there are players in Gibraltar who are going to make it to other divisions. Valentina Gunina, maybe she's playing in the next division and she has to finish her game very quickly in order to play for her team. And as we mentioned, Hikaru Nakamura is in Gibraltar and he's going to play at 3 a.m. from Gibraltar. That's just crazy stuff.
So we're getting in this game a really interesting thing. Knight h3 happened. I think it was the only attempt, right? Because he had to stop the king from coming in. And black said, I'm just going to cut off the white king. Okay, here's a tricky line that maybe white could try. Is g5, king f5, rook f7, king g4, knight f2, and then at least black can't play king g5 because of knight e4.
Yeah.
But the problem with all that is you just move the king somewhere, and then later you can take on the square. But now he played rook a7 instead, which maybe is a better try. Actually, that's pretty cool because what we're going to do is play rook a6 check.
Yes, and cut the king further back.
Cut the king. Though there's all kinds of things. Yes, I like it. And you know what that means, Anna, is that you were right, is that rook g2 would have been better than rook d2.
I just wanted the pawn as early as possible.
Right. Yeah.
Another move I thought made sense was rook h2 to pin the knight, but he didn't want to. And maybe in that case, knight g5 was a move. But anyway, now they are playing. Shall we have a look at the other boards just to see how this match is going?
So, which one would you
like? 1.5 at the moment. So there's another game, this endgame, where white is trying to win with a piece up. And the fourth game.
Okay.
So Halldorsen won, Hogue drew.
Hauge
is missing.
Hauge won, right? Or excuse me, Hauge lost.
Yeah. So Arvidja Garg beats Lars Oskar Hauge. Well, that's a brilliant result for the Delhi Dynamites. Board 4 of the Dynamites beating board 1 of the Trolls.
Yeah. Huge win.
This is the day of the underdogs.
So, right, we have one game left with the Delhi. And
this end game.
Wait a second here. Oh, that's a hard end game. Well, white should win this without too much grief, right? He just needs to be careful. Rook e1, very nice move. End of the game, right? Because king d4 and then knight e6, very sweet. Okay, so Norway's or Mihailov's going to win that one, right?
Yeah.
Oslo. The Oslo Trolls.
Oh, wait a second. Give me a moment. I need to switch between the windows. But we claimed it the other way around. So Sahai Grover wins. And that means 2.5, 1.5. The Dynamites win the first round.
Yeah. There it is. Yeah.
Shall we switch back to the other India versus Norway match? They are already playing their second game.
Sure. Let's take a look. I'm resetting small things just to make everything perfect here.
Just let me know which game you want to start with, and I can start talking about it.
Sure. Let's see. We have so many games now. Which one?
I know.
Which game would you like to talk about?
We've got 8 teams, 4 matches with 4 players in all matches. So let's start with the Hammer. Streamer Hammer.
Yeah, let's do the Hammer. He's so hard to find.
I know. He's always in the hiding.
He's in hiding. I don't see him. I don't see the Hammer.
Maybe he must have finished already.
Yeah.
So, Agdenstein.
All right, let's look at Mr. Agdenstein. He again has white. Has that right? He had 2 whites in a row? No, that's right. He was black last time and it was a little bit of trouble. What do you think? I guess just intuitively I would say white is doing okay. It's of course kind of a mess. It's all about, how do you feel about the hanging pawns, Anna? What are your feelings about it?
It's always a mixed feeling, at least for me. I always feel like it's nice that you got this dynamic possibility of pushing them, and it gives you space, semi-open files, and the good control of the center. But at the same time, I always end up having them like weakened or fixed.
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think about the hanging pawns, Jesse?
Well, you know, when I was a kid, I was very prejudiced against the hanging pawns. But now I've come to respect them a little bit more. It really is, you know, like sometimes you can just, even if you have less pieces, like black wants to trade pieces, but even if you have less pieces, they control so many squares that they can be very annoying, right? And
Yeah.
here we just have a classic situation where white needs to play something like bishop b2. But the problem is on a move like bishop b2, you got to worry about queen b6. And the question is, are things dropping?
Yes. How do you develop the pieces here if not bishop b2?
So maybe like bishop b2, queen b6, knight c4, rook takes c4, and then you could play queen takes c2. That should still be good for black, though, because, you know, the rook has that nice position on c4, and black could think about playing a knight d5 or something soon. So
Yeah, I'm not sure who is better in that position that you have just mentioned.
Yeah, I think, Augustine has to solve some problems here. Because bishop, what else could he do besides bishop b2?
You should definitely play bishop b2. If not, there was no way to develop the bishop. So
Right.
he's going for it, bishop b2.
Right.
Now the question is, what does he want to do after queen b6? Knight c4, as Jesse mentioned, could be met by rook takes c4 and then queen takes b2. Is it? No, I was just wondering, like, but it doesn't make sense. If queen b6, knight c4, a rook takes c4, if queen takes c2, then the d4 pawn is hanging. Queen takes d4, is that correct?
I was just trying to reset some stuff that isn't...
Sure. So I just thought that there's no good way out of this position. After queen b6, knight c4, rook takes c4. If queen takes c2, the d4 pawn is hanging because of the pin on the c file. I thought.
True, but at least then you're still going to get a very open position.
Yeah, for the bishops. He's going back. Bishop g6. He was afraid of knight c4, it seems, after queen b6.
Yeah. So now Augustine gets everything he wants, right? Because we've achieved the classic hanging pawn structure, and we'll be able to hold on to them. And, you know, who's really upset about the pawns is the knight on f6, right?
Yeah.
Because now he can't do knight d5. Also, the rook on c8 is upset because it's going to be hard for him to do some kind of pressure against c4. So maybe what black should think about is a move like bishop b4, which he does. And I think as long as white holds it together here, he should be better. Like, I'm guessing rook ed1, right? That's a simple move to play.
Yes, I'm slightly puzzled still about bishop g6. It seems that he was afraid of knight c4.
Right.
After queen b6, which seemed to be critical.
Yeah, I think for sure queen b6 looked right. And now he's going to, you know, these positions, it's not like black's lost or anything. He just was going to suffer a little bit. And it is a question, you know, how bad it is. I think it's very dangerous. I mean, you're going to play a move like b6, and you have to worry about the knight coming in and hopping in on e5. You know, do you want to play bishop d2 just so that your dark square bishop does something? Okay, so he plays b6. And the only thing that Augustine has to figure out is if knight f3, does he have to worry about bishop e4? But he just plays
Going
knight
toward the
b3.
queen's side, knight b3.
All right. And, you know, one cool thing about knight b3 is we kind of have a threat here of just playing c5. Not only to get a passed pawn, but also to make the bishop on b4 uncomfortable, right?
Yes, that's the typical opportunity that you like about hanging pawns, this dynamic factor.
Right.
So it's turning out well for white, it seems. What about the other positions in this match?
Which game should I click on? I'm still looking for the hammer. How about Mr. Elam? Let's look at Mr. Elam. He is playing Pironic. And I would love to see Mr. Elam win one game. But you know what? He is down. He's down a piece again. So he's going to lose. He's going to lose this game. Yeah, he lost a piece
down, and also white's pieces are very active. So I don't see a single bit of compensation, unfortunately, for Mr. Elam, the young, talented Norwegian player. Speaking of young, talented players, we will also look at the game of Nodirbek Abdussatorov, the youngest grandmaster, second youngest grandmaster in history, currently the youngest grandmaster. He's playing today. He's making his debut for the Volga Stormbringers.
Is he playing live right now?
Yes, I believe so.
What's his handle?
Let me find his game. In the meantime, oh, I got him. He's playing a rook endgame against Melis Kanep. So it's Paul 66666 against Beck 04.
Got it, yeah.
These handles are just, I think they're doing their own competition. Who's got the coolest handle?
This should be just winning for, well, let's see. It's a little tricky. I feel like I know this endgame and it's lost for white. So we play king f3 now. King g3 is probably the same thing. And king e4 is not going to work because of rook a1. I think he needed to check. He plays king g2 instead. I think it's still winning because now king f1. And then we're going to go king f1, rook h8, king g1, rook g8, rook g2. And that's lost, right?
Yes,
so,
and the white king is not in time to get to the third rank so that you could give a check and force the black king in the corner.
Now, Anna, you were telling me this kid is 13 years old?
He is currently the youngest grandmaster. And altogether in history as well, of course, still the youngest is Sergei Karyakin. He's got the record. Right. He completed his grandmaster title when he was only 12 years old. Now, Nodirbek got his title at the age of 13 years, 1 month and 11 days before Magnus Carlsen.
Wow, yeah, this is... yeah, well, this will be fun. Let's pay attention to this kid today. I would love to see more of his games. He's thinking here, I don't know why, but he's definitely winning this one. Yeah. And, you know, the hammer continues to hide from me. You know, I don't see him.
He doesn't want us to talk about him. He wants it on stream, just privately.
Okay. So Estonia and Volga are really, there's one game separating them. And actually, you know, what I'll do is let's look at the standings real briefly. Oh, those aren't the standings. All right, we'll go away from the standings. I thought I had the standings. So maybe if I click here, actually, and go back. So, yeah, so I have the standings in front of us. And just to remind everybody, Norway is on top with 10.5 points going into this. So they have a huge match today with, you know, their opponent has drew last time. Mumbai and Delhi drew. And so that's a huge deal. And of course, Oslo and Estonia also won. So they're the people really to look out for. And, you know, another player I would like to see his games today is Jan Elvis. Jan Elvis, who I've had many bitter battles through decades. He is playing.
He's been a world-class player.
Yeah.
So you're right that we should also follow his games. There are just so many strong players.
That's right. Okay, I'm going to go back to the board, and we'll look at some... Who should we follow next, Anna? Who do you like?
So we conclude that Nodirbek is winning.
Yeah, he's winning.
His first game in the Pro Chess League, which is just great for this talented boy from Uzbekistan. Actually, I met him a few years ago, and already back then he seemed to be very strong, and I think he was just 9 years old. So
right,
potential was there. He has just won his game against Melis Kanep, first victory, and that's a win for the Volga Stormbringers. In this match, the result so far is 1.5, 1.5. So there's a remaining game, or this was the last one.
I think that was the last one. I'm also a little bit confused because it says that white won on time.
Sorry?
It says white won on time with the kid's game, and the kid was black.
No way.
That's what it says? I don't know.
I see it now, but no, that would be so unfair if he lost on time, this position.
I mean, the only way I could imagine it would be like some bad connection, or I don't know. I don't know how it happens, because he played beautifully.
No. My heart is broken now. He's only 13.
Imagine how he feels.
Why? I generally don't root for or against anyone, but he's a 13-year-old boy. He's my favorite right now.
Yeah, so I don't know how it happened.
Why? No, this is unfair. Pro Chess League. I know it's the bad connection. Probably we don't know where he is playing from, so he might have bad internet connection. He couldn't make his move in time. There's increments, so he shouldn't lose on time normally.
Right. Okay. Well, now Armenia is leading 2-0 against Riga, and you were saying that Armenia last week wasn't playing their strongest players, and this week has really stepped it up, right?
Yes, they lost and they realized that this is tough competition. They need their best players. So Malkumyan and Andresian are playing now against the Riga Magicians.
It says Manukian won. And,
there's board 4 for the Armenia Eagles.
Oh, right. So they're two top boards.
He won his first game.
Yeah.
Oh, another underdog. He beat Igor Kovalenko, the top player of the Magicians. This is good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
I love the underdogs winning. How do you feel about that, Jesse?
Oh no, I've decided I don't like the underdogs. I want the best player to win. Like every time Magnus loses, I get upset. I never want Magnus to lose.
He doesn't lose often though.
Actually, let's take a look at this guy Saleh. I'm pronouncing that wrong, I assume. But he's playing Haldorsen. And he's an interesting player. And so he is, you were saying, the top player from the Emirates right now.
Yes, Salam Saleh.
And that's really cool. That's a very tense position that he's got with Haldorsen.
How do you do that?
Haldorsen. I think Haldor is a great name, and I like saying it. Haldor,
I like it too, but I can't say it. I just wish I could.
So I think the problem for Saleh is he's got all of these potential weaknesses. And c5 was a great move, so everything's opening up for black. And if DC, then knight takes e3, right? And the whole setup is shattered. And the dark squares are a disaster. So white needs a good move. The knight on c2 is a real magician. He's hitting d4, e3, and also a1, where the white rook wants to go.
I agree that this position is now at least looking complicated after c5.
This is the magic of the Slav. This is why people do this to themselves. It's not the Slav, though. It's actually a Queen's Gambit accepted. So knight b5, interesting attempt. Okay. So the knight b5 also trying to be a magician. right? Trying to touch c7 and hold things down on d4. And maybe he can just do it. And Black's worry is that, you know, he's essentially down a rook for a moment, right? The rook on h8 isn't doing anything. So, knight b5 looks like a good fighting move. And maybe Black is just going to take on d4. That's probably the simplest thing that he can do.
And just trade pieces on d4, or how would you follow up after
well,
c6?
Okay, so after
takes?
Well, if you play knight takes, then I can take on e3 and damage the structure.
You're right. So you have to go bishop takes first.
You could think about taking with the knight too, because you know the white can tell himself, I might have a weakness, but I'm going to try to win that c4 pawn, and I'm going to play moves like rook c1 or rook a1. So, you know, both moves will be probably viable for white after cd. What else could Black do besides cd, right?
Yeah, c takes d4 seems to be the most forcing and straightforward continuation.
You know, maybe another move could be to play bishop d5.
So you don't mind knight c7 check if the bishop is taken on d5 and not on a8.
All right, and maybe actually Halldorson found a better move. He played bishop c6, but I think missed. He missed knight takes c4.
He must have missed knight takes c4. That's a very strong move. Now the b6 knight is hanging as well, and later the bishop from c4 is protecting the b5 knight.
Right, and of course, if bishop b5, taking the knight, then knight d6, and we'll regain the bishop back on b5 with check.
Yes.
So everything
very nice tactics with discovered attack.
Yep, he should have, Haldor should have heard me and played bishop d5.
Yeah, or take on d4 at least, but now it looks good for Salem Saleh.
Yeah.
So this is what you like, when the stronger player prevails.
Isn't that terrible? Isn't that a terrible thing? I mean, I think actually, I was talking to some friends of mine recently, and maybe you can divide humanity into those who are for the underdog and those who want the like established power to win, right? Because some people really always want the underdog to win, and I get that, you know, it's kind of fun. But on the other hand, isn't it, if Magnus loses and you believe he's the best player, isn't that a shame?
It is. I guess it depends on the scenario. Like, I generally never root against Magnus. Like, he's one of my favorite players. But apart from that, when I don't see the names of the players, I just always wish that the player with lower rating has chances at least. Like, I don't even want them always to win, of course.
Right.
Upsetting all the time would be maybe too much to ask for, but just not to have this psychological pressure, or like not to lose the game before they start playing. I want to see them playing very brave and doing their best.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of some.
Sorry, but according to Greg, we should give a shout out to the commissioner of the Pro Chess League, the creator of this wonderful league, Greg Shahadi. He's in the chat on Chess.com. So if you guys want to talk to him, he's there. And he's saying that I would root against Magnus if Greg was to play Magnus, which is of course obvious. We would all root for Greg against Magnus. And he's got good chances, especially in the gym.
In the gym, I was just thinking, like, what would happen? Just let's put that out there to the Twitter sphere, whatever. Like, who would win if Magnus and Greg went on like a CrossFit showdown, right? Who's going to win that battle?
Let's propose it right now. I'm going to write down the regulation. Chess.com, CrossFit showdown, Greg versus Magnus. I love it.
So really interesting developments with the Saleh game, and the bishops, Saleh's bishops look pretty good. And what I really like about the bishop on b5 is it's working with the pawn on d6 to just control all the squares in front of the black king. So for example, maybe, right, he took the knight on d4, and now we just need to get the rook in, and there he goes with rook a1. And the only idea I have for black is maybe tossing d3 real quick, but instead he plays king c8. I think rook a7, white should be winning, right? It just, what a beautiful
Looks
position.
like, yeah.
And the other thing is, if black plays d3, I think white shouldn't let himself get distracted by the pawn and play king f1. You know, bring the king in to deal with that dirty pawn, because I don't want to take it and lose my beautiful bishop position.
You don't want to lose time on that dirty pawn.
I don't want to lose time on that dirty pawn. Yeah. Well, who do you think would win between Magnus and Greg at the CrossFit gym?
Well, seeing Greg's confidence, he's saying that he could give knight odds to Magnus in that. So I think Greg. What do you think, Jesse?
I'm never for the underdog. I'm never for the underdog. Magnus is fit. Magnus is a fit guy.
He doesn't do CrossFit, does he?
But you know, to me, like, okay, I'm not an expert in CrossFit or anything, but it's kind of like, how many push-ups can you do, right? That's ultimately kind of what it's about, I think. I mean, I'm not, like I said, I don't really know, but my sense is it's just like a basic fitness level, right? Anyways, I'd go with Magnus there. I think, by the way, that one of the interesting things that's happened with chess in my lifetime, and probably in yours too, is just that the top players are just way more fit than they used to be. Right? Like when I was a kid, it was all these out-of-shape Russian guys. Right? They were just in terrible shape, and they would beat us. But now it's like you've got to be really, like, all of them, even like Caruana, Vichy too. Like Vichy used to not be in shape, but now the guy's really in shape, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting new trend. And I think even guys like Greg, who aren't playing competitively anymore, I think a lot of us started to trying to get fit. Not all of us succeeded, right? We tried to get fit, including myself, when we realized, oh, right, you know, you must be fit to at least attempt to play good, right? I mean, because it's so hard at these tournaments. There's so much stress and so much is going on.
That's true.
Yeah.
But how do you think that it has changed? And isn't it that you've got to list 7 rules on how to be better at chess, and one of them is to get fit?
That's right. Yeah. That's right. I
did my research.
You did.
So you don't agree with that anymore?
Oh, no. I think you have to get fit. Yeah.
Oh, wait, fit. I thought it was fat.
Fit.
I thought it was way funnier that one of your rules is to get fat. My bad. I did my research, but not in the correct way, it seems.
That's hilarious. So what Anna's referring to is, years ago, people kept asking me, I think a lot of players get asked, like, how do you improve your chess? And I wrote a quick blog post on that. And I'll say, just, you know, to recap it briefly, what I really do believe is that the main thing you have to do, more than anything, way more important than getting fit, is to really review your games in depth. That's just my own personal belief. So Soleil's thinking about it. I think rook a7. Why is he thinking so long on rook a7?
I don't understand. Do you think he disconnected from the platform?
I don't know. I mean, he does have some time to think about it, but it is weird that he's thinking so long.
Shall we switch to another board? Because this is getting very boring if he doesn't make a move for 5 more minutes.
Yeah, come on, Soleil, move. Now, can we briefly look at Hazangatin?
Sure.
This is, for me, this is my own personal interest more than anything else, because this guy...
The community will love it, Jesse.
This guy, Hazangatin, is very interesting to me. He played in the United States years ago. He was playing in a lot of tournaments all the time, and then he went back. He went back home, and so I haven't seen his name in forever. So that's just kind of cool. And he's playing the guy, Paul... you know, with a bunch of sixes after his name. That's the guy who who beat the kid. You know, he's the guy who beat the kid, unfortunately. So
now we are rooting against him?
Yeah, now we're rooting against him.
He's not the bad guy. It's internet connection is the bad guy.
Let's look at, how about Agdestein? He's a favorite of mine. He's an old guy.
Yeah, but he's very fit.
He's very fit. He's very fit.
Former football player, still in shape, and he can even sing. Have you seen the music video about Magnus Carlsen?
No.
By Einstein rapping.
Oh, that's great. I haven't seen. I'm going to look that up, though. Agdestein has a light square problem at the moment, and it looks kind of severe, so he needs to figure it out. He probably thought he was doing great, and he does look like, this was the hanging pawn games. But now after move like Queen H1, that looks hard to meet, right? That looks like a hard move to deal with. Actually, not Queen H1, Queen H3. It might end up on H1, but Queen H3 first.
Yes. So is he in trouble?
Oh, he's got to be, right? The knight's going to come in too. You could play both Queen H1 or Knight G4, and black just starts with Bishop D5, which maybe gives white the chance to just sack the exchange back. But that's going to be lost too. Actually a good move for black after rook takes D5 would be ED, so that the rook on D8 could go to E8.
Yeah.
So this looks terrible.
This looks just lost.
You're right.
But I think we should stay here because this game is about to finish.
Sure. Rook B8, very nice move. So all the pieces are getting in now. Knight G4, this looks simple and strong, right? Yeah, there's a lot of good moves here.
How to finish this, Jesse? What would you play here?
Queen H1 looks really hard to deal with, as does Knight G4. Both of them look pretty good. Maybe he's thinking too long about it. Another clever move, actually, is Knight E4 to meet Rook takes E4 with Queen H1. Instead, he plays the simple Queen H2, and that, of course, is good and tricky, because if Rook E2 now, then we can play Queen G1. So Queen E2, probably his only attempt. Queen G1, and now if Queen F1, we're going to play Queen takes D4.
Oh, it's all collapsing. Yeah, now he's coming from the other flank. Queen B4 check sometimes, or Rook B1.
He's like a spider monkey now. He's just coming at him. And a move like a spider monkey, Queen B4, Queen D2, Queen C5. Yes, very nice. So someday the rook is going to land on B1, right? Someday the rook's going to land on B1. Yeah. And it's going to be a disaster.
Queen B4, Queen C3. And now...
Queen B1 looks good, yeah. These positions are so painful. There's just not much you can do.
Right. No, especially if you look at the A3 rook, that's not really helping. And C1 bishop.
Yeah.
This is very sad for Agdestein.
It's not over yet, though, and we got some severe time pressure. Agdestein's barely holding on. The rooks have occupied some defensive positions. Ooh, Rook B2, Queen E4. Oh, man. Rook E3, probably Queen H1's coming. Black doesn't want to trade that rook if he can avoid it. Yeah, he traded the rook, so now white has chances to live.
Right? It looks like it's
so important. Yeah, so important to trade the rook when you've got two rooks against the rook and piece.
Indeed, indeed. So now it's only white that can control the open files and ranks, and now this is a mess. They don't have time. 3 seconds versus 4 seconds. G6, and now it's got some checks and attacks. And who's winning this game?
I don't know. Black won on time. Oh man.
Oh, that's the worst.
All right, so let's go and look at this score here for a second.
Oh, just when the position started to be decent for white, he lost on time.
So Mumbai is moving ahead here. They are moving ahead. They've got 5-3 now.
5-3.
That's a big deal.
Yes, and 2 more rounds to go in that match. So guys, don't go anywhere if you are rooting for the Mumbai Movers or the Norway Gnomes. They have still 2 rounds left, and we shall look at the other matches as well. So the Armenia Eagles scored this massive win in the first round that we looked at. The Volga Stormbringers could have won their match if the youngest grandmaster in the world wouldn't have lost on time.
Oh, that was hard. That was
I
really hard.
know, I know. So how about checking him out now if he's winning again?
What's
That'd
his?
be a fun time.
So what was his handle again? The, is it
It was
Beck?
something weird.
It was Beck
Back
Beck
04.
04. Yeah, there we go.
I wonder what does he mean by that? We should ask him one day.
Well, he has a promising looking position, right?
Yeah.
He's up a pawn. He's got a beautiful unopposed light squared bishop. And black's only hope that I can imagine is something like knight d4 to get the opposite color bishops. But honestly, that should just be lost, right? Because the light squares are so strong.
I think you're right that that is at least something that he can hope for. Although in opposite colored bishop positions with so many pieces still on the board and white attacking, it's very nice with the bishop on e6.
Right, and in fact, a slightly similar position, of which this is a much better version here, that everybody should look at is Magnus's game yesterday against So was a very beautiful opposite color bishop endgame.
Yes.
That, you know, oh, rook takes e3 was a nice attempt actually from black here.
Then he sacrificed the bishop, Magnus, in order to have winning chances. So it wasn't even easy with the pawn out to win that endgame.
Really beautiful game. And so what black did here is instead of taking that position that we talked about, he is going to get a position with the knight against the bishop. And it'll be kind of a question as to whether black can do anything with that knight, right? Because if he can't do anything with the knight, it's just going to be out to lunch over there on b3. Yeah, one blunder, for example, that the kid could play is queen e4, and that would allow knight d2.
Oh no, please no blunders. Nodirbek, you're good. You're good. 7 minutes. That's good time control. Just make a good move. Queen to e2 or d3, but not stepping into knight d2.
He plays d3, yeah. And, you know, these positions are very hard in time pressure. You know, like we said, the knight is going to be a little tricky. And also, white is going to have to... Well, white has two plans, I think. One is to dominate the knight, and the other is to attack the king later. Maybe at some point like g4, g5, depending on what we get. But, you know, yeah, I think we can play against the knight, though, because the knight isn't going to be stable on a square like d4.
That's true.
Right.
It's not a real outpost. And also the a4 pawn sometimes could be a factor.
Could be weak, yeah. And so a move actually that black might want to watch out for is rook d1. Because the rook d1 will ultimately cut the knight out. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, rook d1 at some point could be a real drag. Of course, black got to this position and wanted to do...
g5.
Well, yeah, he has to do something violent. He has to do something violent here. So I don't know if that's really going to help him in the long run, right? Because we can just play f5 if we want.
I like f5, keeping the f5 and the king side more or less closed. So no direct danger against the g1 king. And that's a passed pawn, so also for the endgame.
Another simple thing that white could do is just play king h1. And that way...
so you would let black take on f4.
But then, see, I don't lose the exchange on e3, though, if you take on f4.
Yeah, or I have to take on e3 first and then take on f4.
But then I hold f4, right?
Yeah. No, I didn't mean that black is winning the pawn, but you would not mind that the g5 opens because you want to bring your rook to g1.
Right, and then maybe mate on g8.
Oh, makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
So it's two pleasant decisions for the kid here, right? Both f5 and king h1. I think king h1 is more dynamic because you're saying then that the knight is terrible on b3, and before you even are going to be able to get back, I'm just going to mate you. I'm just going to mate you or something, you know.
I think he will go for that. I think he's a very good attacking player. But no, f5 maybe.
f5 is a fine move. And, one way to think about it, too, is black will eventually have to take on e3, and then the knight's only path to citizenship, if I can call it that, is the knight's going to have to go through d4, and then he can never really take on e6. Now, maybe, though, let me try this variation. Queen e5, and then let's just imagine rook b e1. Can I get tricky with knight c1? Anna, do you see what I'm saying?
Can you just repeat it? I did not hear you.
So rook b e1 was just played, and then the question is, can black get tricky with knight c1? Maybe it's
yes.
nothing.
So I can't take it, and if I move the queen, well, yeah, I have to go to d2, and you go back to b3.
But maybe just queen f2 or something.
So there's no repetition.
Yeah, I don't think black's getting out of it. But it's what he should be thinking about, right? Trying to get some kind of trick in this position. Yeah. So the kid is playing for Volga, and they do need to win this. Yeah, they need to win this for this to work out for them.
They do need it. They lost.
They lost last
against
time.
The Norway Gnomes. They lost badly. So they need to win this match today if they want to have good chances for the playoffs.
So it was as we predicted, and I was saying queen f2. There might be a different way of doing it as well. But yeah, queen f2 seems the simplest, and that's what the kid plays. And I assume now black is just going to move the queen away, right? And then white still has to disentangle himself, but there's not that much that black can actually do, especially white will play moves like king h1 and then move the queen, and you'll eventually be forced to take the poor rook.
So once he takes on e3, you can take back, well, maybe queen takes e3 the safest?
Sure, take with the queen, yeah. So in that case, right, we're going to be up a pawn, and the bishop is actually pretty good on e6. What black has chances to mess around, though. For example, if he goes to the endgame, he can try to put a king on f6, for example.
And block the position.
Yeah. There's things to, yeah, it'll actually turn into a dynamic endgame. Because maybe the critique, too, let's just say the critique of f5 from a positional standpoint, and black did take on e3, is that by putting the pawn on the light square, you're trying to say that your bishop is a monster on e6, but you're actually cut off from a lot of ability, in particular to control the dark squares, right? You've lost the dark squares entirely.
Yeah, and also you can't play rook e7. As you mentioned, this bishop is strong, but also blocking the way of the rook. Now, black does not want to trade queens. He goes queen f6.
Which I don't like too much. And now I think my move rook d1 is kind of clever to cut the knight out completely.
I like it. So the b3 knight will be stuck. He's strengthening the f5 pawn and making sure that the g5 pawn is also fixed, but now the knight comes back to d4. Now rook d1 to force knight takes c6, or you wouldn't do that?
No, yeah, good move. Rook d1, sure. It reminds me of this light square thing he's doing. This is how I play Bug House. I put all my pieces on the light squares and I sack on f7. And then I like to get a pawn on e6. And then, David Proust hates it when I do that to him. I just really nail it to him, and then he gets so mad. And it's just one of my favorite things in life to give that to Mr. Proust.
Really?
Yeah.
You play a Bug House with David?
Oh yeah.
I heard about the chess house.
Yeah, we lived in the chess house and stuff.
Training.
So black is trying to be wild, he's kind of going for it with h5. All of this stuff isn't going to help black, right? It's just weakening his position really more. And so rook d1, or rook e4 both seem pretty sensible to me here.
What about the rest of his team? Because this match, as you mentioned, Nodirbek needs to win for the Stormbringers.
That's right.
But what about the other boards? How are the...
Who else is on his... He plays h3. He's playing pretty mellow. Who else are we looking at here?
Yeah, it seems like Nodirbek is now just making sure that everything is
he's nailing
safe,
it down.
and he wants to keep his time, so he doesn't use too much time.
Yeah.
So on the Stormbringers, the rest of the teammates, Ilya Dudukin, Mikhail Gorozhanin, and Ramil Hassangatin. Hassangatin, we've already looked at his game.
He's still playing. The famous Hassangatin. Oh, that's a wild rook endgame. Oh, I don't even know what to think of that. So,
this is weird.
Right. White is going to go on an adventure to go win the pawn on a3, and he's going to have to hope that his rook gets back out in time to like do stuff. It'll be a tough call. So, for example, black could play king f7, rook a6, and then e5 with activity.
I like your plan.
And I don't know what to think. I assume DE, and then black could think about both taking back on e5 and also even just going for it with rook d2. Instead, he plays rook d6. Cool and calm, and now white has the chance to go into the pawn endgame, though. And wouldn't you just instinctively think that white's chances in this pawn endgame are much better?
I would think so. The problem with pawn endgames is that you need to calculate a lot.
Right.
And black doesn't have time
to
calculate.
And I think black is lost. Like, if king f7, now d5 is a good move. He plays king e4, which is going to be similar. And we're going to be able... d5 now, and it's over, I think, because king f5, and then we have both the better king position, and we have the tempi with the pawns, right?
Yeah.
We own the tempi. So we should
How comes he played rook d6 with such a short time on the clock?
Well, I agree. Yeah, it wasn't. I thought he was going to play. Yeah, I thought he was king f7 was the only attempt.
He must have been sure that this pawn game was okay for him, and with just 16 seconds on the clock, I don't think you can be sure.
So white didn't play d5, but I think he's still winning here. Though this might be a little bit harder because it should still be winning, though, right? We're going to trade things on g5, and you have to time it just right, though. h6 happens, and now h6 was a blunder because now h5 and we have Zugzwang.
Yes.
Yeah, now it's over, and so the famous Hassangatin won.
Your boy.
I'm rooting for him. I haven't seen him in like decades, but I'm rooting for this guy.
So now Jesse comes to commentate on the Pro Chess League so that he can see Hassangatin.
That's right. So,
romantic reunion on Chess.com.
Okay, who should we look at next? There's so much.
So this was a point. Wait a second, I lost track on the score count. Hassangatin won. The Stormbringers are now leading. Well, not yet, but if Nodirbek wins, they will be leading. And there are still two boards. Alex Onishuk, we should look at his game, playing for the opponent, Estonia Horses.
Right. I sometimes think that you see more boards than I do because I don't see Onishuk. He goes by his own name too, right? Yeah.
I believe so, but I don't see him at the moment.
I don't see him either.
I don't think that I always see everyone.
Okay.
There are too many games. But it's just great that we have so many fascinating matches. We just wish we could keep an eye on all the games at the same time.
How about we look at Mr. Hansen for a second?
Oh, I almost forgot about him.
He's Live Strong, and
Livestrong is Agdenstein. GM JLH Mr. Hammer.
This is funny. I thought Livestrong was 2, but when I click on this game, I'm getting Hansen. Are we sure that Hansen isn't in fact... oh, I don't know. That's a weird thing.
Oh, it's okay. Just let me know who do you want to follow.
Well, that's Hansen, though, right? Anyways, yeah, I'm looking at Hansen, and he has got a nice position. He just played knight f2. It looks like it must have been some kind of Benko, and white is in a bad way. And Hansen, of course, is the underdog. So Hansen, he's already had a couple wins this time around, right? He's already been doing pretty well. And he's one of the guys that has to do really well for the Gnomes while Carlsen is out.
Yes, that's true. By the way, Alex Onischuk has won his game. Luckily, we have Greg Shahade not only bringing us together for the Pro Chess League, but also letting us know about each and every result that we miss. So Onischuk won his game for the Estonian horses. That's why the result is 3.5, 2.5.
Right.
Still a very interesting match. And well, I just hope that Nodirbek will win his game. That's all I hope. Not lose the time at least.
Should we go back? Should we go back to the...
Oh, don't worry. No, this is not a broadcast about Nodirbek, even if I would love to. But I think we should keep an eye on every other match as well.
Oh, he's got an exciting game going on.
Oh,
I think he's...
Tell me that, Jess.
I think he's winning. Yeah, I think he's easily winning.
Oh.
Yeah, he's easily winning.
And he's got over 2 minutes, so
yeah.
It's safe. It's safe.
Okay. Hansen's opponent is thinking. It looks like he's doing very well. I found the hammer. He's finally back. We've been looking for the hammer for quite some time. The hammer's games are always so complex. And we got it again here. Pironic just played knight b3 and is giving the hammer something to think about. And the hammer responds with knight f6. Oh man, so the hammer might end up losing his pawn on d4, but if black takes that pawn on d4, bishop b2 will be an angry bishop.
Oh, very angry bishop. I would not dare to take the pawn on d4.
So Pironic plays a good move, I think, with bishop e4. And one piece of good news for black is that if bishop g5 pinning the knight, you've got bishop g2, king g2, queen d5.
Good point.
So bishop e4 is a nice move. And really, like, if black gets a grip on the dark squares with moves like c6, well, he can hope to be a little bit better here, right?
Greg once again knows everything. You know why we missed
What
Hammer
did we miss?
The previous occasion?
Why is
he
that?
won a game without playing the game. His opponent failed to connect to the Chess.com server.
Well, I think Hammer's opponent now has queen d5, and then that looks very strong. It just looks like one of those really unpleasant moves you don't want to ever face. Hammer played bishop h3, and it's kind of a combat. You know, his intuition was combative and correct that, like, if he lost that bishop, the light squares are going to be really hard. But the light squares are still going to be hard. And honestly, black has more than one move, right? Like queen d5 is the endgame move that, of course, a boring person like me would like. But also moves like c6 or bishop d5, those are also pretty good moves. And the problem for Hammer, there goes queen d5, is that black really shouldn't even want to take the d4 pawn and tell white that his bishop on c1 is poor. And there we have a very nice position for black here. Some might even say this is positionally lost. Of course, there's everything to play for the hammer here. But yeah, this is a little difficult. A simple move like c6 makes sense to me, but also bishop f3, bishop d3, he plays c6. Yeah.
Well, it's good news for the movers, with 5-3 leading against the Gnomes, having a good position here. Pironic versus Hammer. How are the rest of the team doing?
Right. Okay, so we've got the Hansen is winning, I think, at least last time I looked. It's actually kind of messy, but I think he's winning.
By the way, just an announcement, Nodirbek has won his game.
Oh, nice. And let's look at Mr. Elam. He is now I assume Mr. Elam is a kid, right? He's the 1900 player playing board 4. And right now he's facing off against Kunta. He's lost every game so far. But really, if he just wins a game or two or draws a game or two, he will have proven his valor, right?
That is true. And for him, all the opponents are higher rated, like 2, 3, 400 rating points higher rated than him, at least.
And well, you know what? The bad news about Mr. Elam is he is once again down a piece. He has lost a piece again. And I guess he's contemplating playing something like c6 to try to get his piece back, but it's probably just not going to work. There's knight f6, there's all kinds of things White can do in response. And of course, c6 is not a pleasant move because your bishop's out and your d6 pawn is weak, and all that unfortunate stuff is happening.
Yes, that's a pity for Elam. I'm sure that he will do well in other games, but today doesn't seem to be his best day.
And you know what? I'll tell you what's going on right now, Anna, is that Magnus is sitting on his rest day at Vaikanze, and he's listening to us right now. Magnus is listening to us.
That's a horrible rest day. Magnus, go away.
and he's looking at this broadcast. He's saying, "I blew it. I should have been there for my team. Instead, I'm at doing this resting thing, and then not only that, but then Greg Shahada thinks he can take me out in a push-ups challenge." Oh, Magnus isn't going to like this at all.
He will say, not push-ups. But yes, this must be like a nightmare rest day for the world champion.
Now, talking about nightmares, look at what Mr. Elam got faced with. White could have played the simple knight g4, but instead, White is being very cruel. So the point is, if rook d6, I can play rook d6, queen d6, knight e8 check. Ouch.
That's painful.
That's very painful. And then there's going to be other terrible things that are going to happen if Mr. Elam takes the knight with the king, right? If nothing else, there's rook f1, but there's probably other more terrible things than that. So, that was just cruel. You could have played knight g4. Look at this finish that Mr. Kunta's going to lay on the kid. Rook d6. Oh, normally I would turn away and not look, but now I have to. Will the kid fall into the knight e8 brilliancy?
I guess he sees it, but even if you spot it, what do you do here as black?
Maybe this is credit to, maybe Kunta's trying to get Greg Shahada's best move prize. Maybe that's what he's going for.
Mentioning the best move prize, Magnus did win it last week.
Yeah.
The knight takes f6 move, and now the knight is on f6. Maybe some similarity.
That's right. And Magnus is watching us right now and being like, I could have had the best move prize, and now Kunta's getting it instead.
Against my team.
Against my boy.
Poor Elam.
Yeah.
We are bad, Jesse. Pulling the leg of the world champion.
Well, he's the one. It's his fault. He's sitting at home on some couch in Vaikanze, and it's cold outside and it's windy, Yeah. No one's having fun over there. Yeah. Okay, so let's go and look at some other games. The kid. Let's look at the kid. He's just beginning a game with my nemesis. My nemesis, Onishuk, Alexander Onishuk.
Oh, your nemesis.
My nemesis, yeah.
I did not know.
Yeah. Onishuk has tormented a whole generation of American players. And so the kids, so I'll say with Onishuk, okay, check out what he does. Okay, this is very typical Onishuk. He is one of the most solid players that I've ever played against. And he is just going to he loves these positions where he gets a very simple position, maybe slightly worse, maybe a little bit worse. But, this kid is what he did. It's very easy for Onishuk to play these positions. He's kind of, You know actually how Magnus is so good about playing e4, e5 positions. Onishuk is very good at all these like d4, d5-ish positions, you know, very simple positions.
So he simply wants to get a game, even if it's slightly worse, he would just be happy to play a middle game with pieces on the board.
And I'll say it's usually just very slightly worse. He's not going to give you that much.
Okay.
Yeah.
By the way, those of you mentioning, well, not mentioning, but I see that now there's a discussion about Magnus. I don't think that those of you who are saying that he doesn't care about his team, I don't think you are right. He's very dedicated to the Norway Gnomes, and he was also going to play this week, but it's the last rounds of Tata Steel Chess, and he wants to win that tournament too. If he didn't have the other tournament, he would be playing right now. So he is one of the most dedicated players to the Pro Chess League and to his team, together with Maxim Vasilagorov, I believe, the two of them in the elite. And they just want to play every match of the Pro Chess League, basically.
Right. Yeah. I was talking smack, but I'll stand by the fact that Magnus, he wants Greg. He wants Shahada bad.
He's just going for Greg.
Here's a nice trick, by the way, that Onishuk could fall into. If he plays either knight d7 or knight a6, the kid could play knight takes e5, bishop g2, and knight c6 with a nice intermezzo. So Alex doesn't fall for it and plays a5 instead. And honestly, the kid's got this trick is giving Onishuk a little bit of grief here. Bishop b2 is played. And Onishuk has a little bit of grief, like, because of the trick of knight takes e5, it's making his position a little bit uncomfortable. For example, if queen d7, another natural developing move, then knight e5 again happens. So, but you know, like all of these Onishuk positions, at the most he's just a little bit worse. So even if he took on f3 with his bishop and played knight d7, he's still, you know, very solid with a position like that. Maybe that's even what he'll do. One thing I'll say, you know, about Onishuk is to beat him, you really have to be able to play a very long game and get a couple tricks and then beat him in a hard endgame, you know? That's the kind of guy he is. I think actually in terms of style, another person who plays like that on a higher level that we've seen is So. And that was one of the reasons I thought Magnus's win yesterday was so impressive, because, you know, you have to beat him at every single stage of the game in order to take him out. Yeah.
I'm sure that Magnus was very pleased about the win because of that as well. As you mentioned, it's just so difficult to beat So.
That's right, yeah. And, you know, I think So is definitely one of the main competitors. There's so many competitors now for Magnus. And one cool thing about this candidates thing that, you know, I really enjoy is, of all the candidates, I think all of them have a reasonable shot, right? Not only of winning the candidates tournament, but even of challenging Magnus. Okay, so I know Onishuk well enough, and look at that. He took on f3. So we're going to see he's going to have a slightly worse position, but there's nothing inherently wrong with it, right? He's got like the bishop on e7 isn't as happy as it might want to be, and the unopposed bishop of white's is reasonable looking. Let me ask you a quick question, Anna. Would you take with the pawn or the bishop here if you were white?
Oh, I just so love a healthy pawn structure that I would take with the bishop without thinking about it. But now that you mentioned, maybe one should consider he takes f3. Would you have taken with the pawn or the bishop?
I probably would have taken with the pawn, just because later you know, white wants to play something like f4 to bust things open. He followed you though. This is your soulmate here, by the way. You have a 13-year-old soulmate here. And f5 comes, yeah. And now Onishuk is, you know, he's a little worse, but there's nothing, you know. If I was white, I guess I'd play e4 to try to play on the light squares. That's a little controversial maybe. But what else is, you know, this is the problem for the kid, is the kid needs to develop a plan here. One nice thing about EF, right, is at least I kind of know what I want to do. And
just
now
F4 and open up the position.
yeah, and now it's not so clear about how White's supposed to play this. And Black, of course, is just going to play knight d7, you know, very soon here.
Yeah, normally I would like to stop your pawn, so I would consider e4, but then f4, and
but if f4, there's bishop g4, right?
Yeah, I think Black wants to go f4. Yes.
I'm going to predict that Onishuk plays g6.
You don't think he will go f4 here?
Because if f4, then bishop g4, and the bishop.
That's too comfortable for White.
And actually, not only that, but Onishuk saw the last game of the kid. Remember, the kid got a bishop on e6, and he's like, "No, kid, I'm not going to let you drop that bishop on e6."
Maybe you're right.
Well, right, and then, you know, Proust knows about my bishop on e6 when I get him with the bug house, so he wouldn't like that either. This is an interesting thing. I think a lot of natural King's Indian players, well, that's actually a good question of what their instinct would be. The other problem with f4, right, is you're putting your pawns all on black, and you just have that one black squared bishop. Right, so if you play g6, you can hold out for maybe a bishop g5 later, for example. He plays f4, so you won that one. He won that one. The kid's
I just like f4 more, but you're right that now bishop g4 makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And there it goes, Nodirbek.
And maybe what Onishuk is thinking is that the bishop on e6 can be dealt with by knight c5. Right? I don't know about that, though, because even if you take the bishop on e6, the bishop is going to be very strong. I mean, the pawn will be strong on e6. a3. Oh, the kid's very ambitious here. So
and he takes good care of his time. I love that.
That's right, yeah. Well, honestly, I don't like f4. I think Onishuk is worse now. This is kind of a big match, right?
It is. It is probably the game of the day, at least in our division, because it's one of the most talented kids against the highest rated player in our division today.
Right. So queen e8. Black dreams of mate. Right?
Where is the mate?
I don't know, but he's dreaming about it. He's dreaming about it. b4, very simple and strong. I have to say, I really like the way the kid has built the position in the last sequence of moves, right? So from move 14 to 17, e4, bishop g4, a3, b4. And what b4 will do is not only gain space, but it'll mean that the bishop on e6 will be angry forever, right? It'll be angry forever. And one key thing we can watch for here is the way to see if the kid breaks through really is, will he be able to achieve c5? Because he needs, for one, to get a little bit more space, and also to break the e5 square for his bishop on a1, right? Because the bishop on a1 is right now not doing so much.
So how do you achieve c5? Because that looks like the square that is most controlled by Black's pieces.
Right. Well, you could start just by thinking the bishop on e6, right? But whenever the knight moves away, then we can play c5, right? You could always do it like that. And I don't think the knight is going to be comfortable. Well, the knight definitely isn't comfortable just hanging out on d7, because the black queen has to babysit it for the whole time. Right?
It's unpleasant for Black, really unpleasant.
Yeah.
So how does Onishuk feel about these kind of positions? You said he would be okay with slightly worse, but it's more than slightly worse, isn't it?
Well, now that he sees the bishop come into e6, nobody really is going to like that. But he is clever, so I think, okay, one way he's thinking about it, and I'm sure the kid is thinking about it too, If you drop the bishop on e6, then you have to worry about f3. Right? And part of the dream of mate of queen e8 is that, you know, we're dreaming of some kind of counterplay with queen h5 if you go ahead and do that.
Yes, correct.
So, yeah, this is a position where white needs an idea. Now, in a blitz game, maybe you should just reroute the bishop. That's another thing you do. Just play like bishop c3, d2. But that's not that impressive, right? Because bishop g5 is going to happen. And at least then my bishop, or my dark square bishop, will do something. One reason also to move the bishop, though, from a1 is maybe white could dream about putting the rook on a1. Now, the kid, in fact, played queen a4, and maybe this is actually a very good move from a practical standpoint, I think.
Just forcing the trade of queens now after the knight has to move.
And then we can't get mated, right? We can't get mated anymore. Maybe there's some reasons to be unhappy. So, for example, imagine knight f6, queen e8, rook e8, and then the bishop moves somewhere, like, I don't know.
And the a file will
And then the a file. And then we're going to regret the fact that our bishop is sitting there on a1.
So he probably had to first solve the problem of the bishops, at least improve his bishops, and then go for this fourth line.
Right. Yeah, so queen a4, probably not. I mean, knight f6 is kind of forced, right? I don't know.
I'm not very convinced about a queen a4 because of the variation that you have mentioned, that black will take control of the only open file after knight f6, queen takes, rook takes. Whoa, what?
I think that's just a prophylaxis, though, because, because, you know, you have to take it back. And, well, the other thing that Onishuk can dream about is when you take back with either pawn, I could also play queen f7. And that's all.
Wants to, instead of knight f6.
It's also interesting because it's claiming that then the queen on a4 is just bad. So maybe that was a clever move too. I thought, you know, knight f6 clearly meant to me that queen a4 was bad, but this might even be stronger. And so white has two pieces out of play, right? He has the queen on a4 out of play and the bishop on a1 out of play. So yeah, sure, queen f7, why not?
Yes, and in that case, well, white has to prevent queen f2, probably by coming back with the queen. Like, you don't really have other moves. Rook e2 can't be played. The bishop cannot protect the f2 square. You have to play queen c2 or queen a2. And
you know, another bummer about fg is now bishop g5 is going to come, and it's going to threaten bishop e3. Right, so imagine if queen f7, queen c2, I think I can play bishop g5, threatening bishop e3.
And you threaten bishop e3 because I can't take it. Now he goes knight f6.
Now he goes knight f6. It's fair enough. It's the easy way to play, right? It's the easy way to play. Because we're going to get the
doesn't want to
a5.
complicate matters against the youngest grandmaster in the world.
Yeah, I liked queen f7. It seemed dynamic anyway. But right, this way, and this is typical Onishuk, right? There was two options, and he chose the one where he's a little bit better and basically has, as far as I can tell, he has no risk anymore. Right? There's no risk for him in this position. Maybe, so queen e8, rook e8, bishop f3, rook a8, and then black needs to see if he can get anything after a move like bishop c3. And maybe white just simply can hold because the bishop on e7 is so terrible. Yeah, actually I don't think the kid's doing so badly now, right? Bishop c3, and if rook a3, we can play rook c1.
Yeah, holding for sure looks possible, but it must be disappointing to Nodirbek after the position he had.
Well, he almost, I mean, he got lucky after queen a4. That queen f7 looked terrible. Honestly, though,
I thought that black was doing much better after queen f7.
It looked dangerous anyway. It looked like black was getting active. The kid can still try to win this position. In fact, g5 played by Onishuk, you know, the thing that he has to worry about is, can white like get his king in? So Onishuk wants to play g4, of course. Yeah, this, you know what? See, Onishuk is a real demon, because if you play, he's a demon. If you play g4, and you could totally play g4 here, right? Then your bishop on f3 is really terrible, and you do not have the magnificent Jesse Cry versus David Proust bishop on e6, right? But if you allow g4, then black's bishop can dream about getting on the h6 c1 diagonal. Plus the bishop on, you know, f3 is still babysitting the pawn on e4. So g5 is an uncomfortable. g4 happened. Actually, a funny thing is the kid in both games, he put all his pawns on light squares to kill his bishop. Only this time the bishop isn't outside the pawn chain, it's in.
Yeah, I guess he would prefer to have it outside, not inside.
Yeah, and so here rook a2 might be a nice move, just to cut the king and make sure white doesn't come up.
This is still very close, but I feel like the tendency is not going well for Nodirbek. Right. By the way, just to mention briefly that we will very closely look at the match between Mumbai Movers and Norway Gnomes the last round, because the movers only need 1 point to win the match. So out of 4 games, they only need to score 1 to win it.
Yeah, that's going to be a good one. And I'm going to jump away just for a second. I'll be right back. This is a fantastic position. I don't know. I guess the kid's going to play h3. And then I don't know what Onishuk will do, but I'll be right back.
Sure. What do you guys think about this position, and who are you rooting for? You should let us know in the chat. I'm watching the chat on Chess.com and on Twitch as well. So if you were wondering if we guys ever read the chat, yes, we read the chat, especially when we are not analyzing some very deep variations. So which team are you rooting for in the Pro Chess League, in the Eastern Division and overall in the Pro Chess League? Yes, Blunderloads, we are going to fix the clock as well. I know that half of it is not seen. We will fix it as soon as possible. Don't worry. I see Driver is rooting for Onishuk. Rockstar is saying that the kids should win. We will show more games. Just be patient, please. I'll need to wait for Jesse for that. So in the meantime, yes, Silverbetel, I'm checking now the Twitch chat that Jon Ludvig Hammer is streaming. And he's streaming in English about his games, about today's match. So you should check that out if you are rooting for Hammer. And who else has a fantasy team? Because I do have a fantasy team, and Nodirbek is on my fantasy team.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, another reason to root for Nodirbek. I've just seen that the clock is not fully visible. Our community is saying.
Oh, let's look.
So if we can.
Oh, what happened there? That's.
Maybe resize the board or the window once again.
I think I know what to do.
And the last round between the movers and the gnomes will now kick out.
Okay, I think I fixed the clock problem.
Oh, it was just this game somehow. If you have it in a different window, I don't know how that happened. But anyway, we shall see if the Gnomes will manage to come back in this last round. They need to score 3.5 points not to lose the match. 3.5.
Oh, man. Magnus is going to be so upset. Yeah. Magnus is going to be so upset. And, you know, I just realized the easiest solution to this, because CrossFit is so confusing to everybody, that we can just make it very simple. Okay, this is my proposal for Greg and Magnus. Actually, you know what? They don't even have to be in the same place for this challenge to happen. The rules are very simple. You have 2 minutes. You have 2 minutes, and the quest is to do as many push-ups as you can for 2 minutes.
For 2 minutes.
Oh.
We shall send this video to Magnus and see if he accepts next challenge. So we will clip this. If someone on Twitch can clip this part of the stream, and we are going to post it to Magnus whether he accepts the challenge of Pro Chess League Commissioner Greg Shahade. And if he doesn't accept it, he will be kicked out of the Pro Chess League. That's obvious.
That's obvious. That much is obvious. Yeah. The kid, by the way, just played an amazing move, c5. Oh yeah, I don't think that was right. Well, maybe it's not so bad. Maybe. Okay, so my sense, if I was black, right, would be like, if I could somehow get my dark square bishop in, then I'm doing great. Also, I thought that rook e2 was kind of a threat. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that, but it seemed like something at least I was worried about.
Yeah, it definitely looks worrying, but maybe that's why he goes c5. He wants to just go for some kind of a dynamic compensation before he loses all his pawns.
Well, like, let's imagine he had just played king f1. Was there anything that Onishuk would actually be able to do to him? I didn't think so.
Maybe nothing. Maybe Nodirbek is just such a dynamic player that he didn't like simply being on the defensive, and he was waiting for the opportunity to go somewhat more active. Let's see what he wants with the c5. Now b6, c5, I guess.
And takes. And now knight d7. I think that's probably a good move.
But if c6, knight c5,
right,
doesn't it feel dangerous for black that the c7 pawn, the moment it drops, you're lost? Like even some tactics sometimes.
Yeah, and that's what happens.
Imagine, for instance, if knight c5 and if white has the rook on b1, I can also play rook b7 and give up the exchange there because this pawn will promote on b8.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And really, like, for Onishuk, the only way, he's got the active rook and the active knight, and obviously he has got a terrible bishop on e7, and it needs to participate in the attack, but it's clear like that thing is not coming out anymore, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Knight c5. And maybe, okay, so rook a1 is one thought for white. But even rook b1 might be a good move, and that's what he does. So a very simple thought of playing rook b8 check and rook c8. Oh, and Onishuk is backing up. This looks, now the kid is doing well. Yeah.
Yeah, so suddenly the c5 changed completely the position. It looked like black was the one pushing and trying to get advantage. Now it's the other way around.
Look at this dirty trick with rook b5. He's thinking about rook c5, bishop e5, bishop c7. I don't even know if that works. I don't even know if that works, but he's also thinking about the much more mundane
bishop a5 as well. A rook protecting
very
the bishop.
Simple.
So yeah, the c7 pawn, it looks like I really would love this position as white. Even if it's not winning immediately, it looks just so nice.
Sure, yeah. King f2, simple and strong.
Very nice, activating the king. Black is very passive. Bishop on d8 and the rook on a8. Oh, I would not like to be Onishuk in this game.
But how does white actually do it, though?
Maybe there's no way, but still, he can play for 50 moves just dancing around with his king. King f6, king e3.
Maybe at some point when we're ready, we'll play bishop b4 and try to get the rook down to b7. Like, of course, now that we have the king...
You mean taking and then bishop b7?
You know, something. At the very least, right, we're going to play bishop f1 and maybe bishop c4. Okay, Onishuk goes for it now with knight b3. Probably needs to do something.
But if I take on c7 and then I take on b3.
So if you take on c7,
Or he has some knight d4.
But knight d4, bishop d8 is check.
Oh yeah. No, so it should be working, and he goes for it.
He goes for it, yeah. This is still hard to win though, because we have an opposite color situation, and so of course, oh yeah, Onishuk is evil. Look what he did. He's got a fortress now. Still, I don't know. Onishuk still might lose this because, okay, so the black king has to worry about the invasion both on the b file and then also maybe later on the f file. That's hard to say though.
I'm keeping an eye in the meantime on the match between Mumbai Movers and Norway Gnomes. I think we should still stick to this game because we've been following it the entire time. But the moment there's something decisive, I think we will go there and see the end of that match.
Now at least Onishuk can finally develop the bishop with bishop b6 check. So at the very least he can tell himself that his bishop got out, and there it finally goes. And check comes. So black is at least active. And, you know, he can play rook f2, and he does. And now I'm going to call that a draw.
Oh, okay. And I will call a point for the Norway Gnomes. Hansen beating Kalkar.
Hansen's done incredible here, right?
Yes, he has.
Oh, wow. That's
amazing. That means that the Gnomes have some chances. They only need to score 2.5 points more from the remaining 3 games.
Okay, so let's look. How about we look at the Hammer then to see how he's doing?
Yeah, let's see.
And you were practicing the pronunciation of Hammer's opponent, so I'm going to give you the chance there.
Oh, geez. No. Diptayan Ghosh?
Oh, you said that really good. Yeah. You said it fast, too.
Well, yeah. I said it like 20 times yesterday, just reading out the names, because I have trouble reading out long names, especially from Asia. But I try to get better. And if there's anyone from India watching, I hope there are plenty of you, then please let us know if we are good pronouncing the Indian players' names. Once again, a reminder, the Mumbai Movers and the Delhi Dynamites, strong teams, but they cannot have their very best players today because they are in Gibraltar. So the Eastern Division is clashing with the round in Gibraltar, and even the Central Division might be clashing. Valentina Gunina is on the team, and we shall see if she makes it. I don't know if she finished already her game in Gibraltar.
This position with Hammer is really interesting. Hammer, optically looks much better, but White just needs a couple moves to get out of his terrible box. And I think b3 is the big question. Like b3, and then the Hammer needs to find some active plan immediately, just to deal with White developing his pieces with stuff like bishop b2, right?
I see some of you telling us to go back to the endgame, but others want to see this match. It's just always so difficult to decide. And there's never really one thing that everybody likes. But if you want to follow the endgame between Abdussatorov and Onishuk, you can follow the game. So you see those buttons. If you're on Chess.com, just click on the buttons under the video and follow, in that case, the Gorky Stormbringers for Nodirbek.
Now, I do have to say, I clicked back because I thought it was going to be a draw. I thought the rooks were coming off. But somehow the rooks did not come off.
Oh, so there is actually a chance, and it's not.
Yeah, so it's
not over.
But now Onishuk did
now
finish.
It's coming off.
Now they did do it.
Whoa! Okay. C7?
Oh.
No, King D7 is
King D7, you're right.
Holding. This is a draw, isn't it?
Unless there's some kind of magic with bishop A6, but I don't know.
He can play that, but...
King C7, right?
Yes. I think this was very well defended by Alex Onishuk, the end game.
Yeah.
Maybe we can see his final moves if they agree to a draw. He's trying. He's still trying rook f5. He's a fighter.
He's a fighter, yeah.
13-year-old, and he doesn't respect his higher rated opponent. Almost 2,700.
He is now going to take a pawn on g5, isn't he?
And then rook f3, winning the pawn on h3, or he doesn't mind.
But rook g7 will be a good check.
That's true. Bishop b5 first.
Bishop b5 first. He wants everything.
Yeah.
He wants everything. And, you know, maybe look at what the kid's actually doing. If rook f5, I guess gf, king d8, f6, and you can't approach the pawn.
Beautiful. Opposite card bishop endgame with equal pawns. So it normally would be a draw, but not in this case with such a passed pawn. So black cannot take on f5.
Ooh, rook f7. The kid's playing amazing. And now bishop c6. Hello. Hello. Oh, this is getting very frightening.
He's such a fighter, Nodirbek.
So maybe black is still holding, but it is tough now. It is really tough. Check to the miserable king. Right, king c7 was right. And I think you should just go back to b8 or something. Maybe c8. b8. Yeah, stay on the dark squares.
An update on the Gnomes movers match is that I think Hammer is doing very well with the black pieces against the and Gosh. Then other boards. Let me just try to review all the boards quickly. Addenstein looking equal-ish.
Oh, it looks like they're finally going for the draw here. Drawn.
And
well, I'm actually thankful to our watchers to turn us onto that. I thought it was going to be a draw, and the kid really played great to come out of that.
Yeah,
so,
that's true.
So
sorry, I need to correct myself because I said that Hansen won already. I was clicking on the previous game, but he is indeed winning now.
Okay.
If you want to check his game, Vincent Masuka versus Abyak, he's beating Abhijit Conte. At least it looks like that. King on e7, I wouldn't guarantee that black will survive this game.
Oh man, what a mess. Kunta needs a good move, but you know what? I'm not sure it's over yet. The bishop on h4 is at least trying to cover all of those dark squares. Not only f6, but if rook d7 happens, then well,
the d8 square. Yeah,
or at
right.
least cover
looking
d8.
Back to d8 too.
But you know what? I mean,
immediately.
The threat would be rook d7 check, king e8, and then queen b8. But still, there's rook d7 and king f8. And then we're not lost.
And I was excited too early just seeing this king on e7.
No, I think you should be excited. Watch, here's the variation I came up as a threat.
So, rook takes e6, queen c7?
That looks also very strong. Rook d7 I figured out is also winning. Like rook d7, king f8, rook d8, bishop takes, rook takes, king e7, queen d6, mate.
Oh, nice. So there are various mate threats, and that's good news for the Gnomes. But as we mentioned, they need 3.5 points out of 4 games in this last round to tie the score. To win the match, they need 4-0. Winning all their games. That's just, what would be the odds to win all games?
So Kunta played king e6 and is probably losing. He is claiming that rook takes e6 isn't going to be mate, but it looks a lot like mate. And there he took it, e6. That looks like mate. You know, the other thing about this game was really Hansen had both the pawns and the compensation, right? Yes. He had everything going on here.
That's the best mix when you've got the material and the initiative and the attack. So he wants to give mate.
He wants to give mate.
What does he want to play? Queen f5 check first? Or what else?
This looks bad. Look at this. He's got 9 minutes. He's gonna find a way. He played Queen F5 pretty quickly, and I assume he sees something. But there's gonna be more than one way to deal with this. I would say to Hansen, he should just take his time a little bit here. There's no rush. Bishop H5, getting the last piece in. Every piece of White's is in on the attack now.
It seems that he has the mate calculated already, so he's very confident, playing very quickly.
Now he can just win the bishop too, right, if he wants.
Yeah, if he wants to.
Yeah.
I think he doesn't. I think he will go for some Queen F5 again and then mate somehow. I'm lazy to calculate it, but I'm sure he has it calculated.
I would take the bishop. He took the bishop, yeah.
You're right. Maybe, I think it also matters that this is the last round. Okay, and his opponent resigned, so that was the best strategy. But this is the last round in this match. And they need to win every game if they want to win the match. So you can't just go and take risk if you don't have it calculated properly and you miss some mates. This was the easiest.
So this will be 7.5 to 5.5. So they're down 2 points. Right. Which game should we look at next?
Hammer is doing well against Diptayan Ghosh. So Wizard force 4-5-6 against GM JLH.
Oh, yeah, that's really exciting. And so, back several moves ago, when I said White could have thought about B3, for whatever reason, he didn't like that. And now he has just a passive position, right? And the Hammer has very pleasant, he's got the D file, he's got that beautiful knight on F3. And he's not even down. Yeah, he's not even down anything.
Yeah, he's not down anything. And imagine the scenario when, okay, now the bishop is hanging, but if bishop e7 and then black plays g5, opening up the h5, this king on g2 is not safe just because there are no queens on the board.
Right, and I think what Ghosh is planning, though, is bishop e7 and then knight e4. So then the Hammer has to worry about knight, not really worry about knight d6, but, that would be one of the things that black has to deal with. Though besides bishop e7, I don't know really what you want to do, right? So there it goes, bishop e7. Oh, and you know that Magnus is listening to us now, right? He's to his friend, the Hammer, in this critical moment.
So you want to propose again the challenge?
Oh,
I hope someone has clipped it and it will be posted. Greg should post it on his Twitter.
That's right.
Yeah, for the CrossFit push-up challenge. I'm really curious. I think that should be an epic event.
And let me just tell you, I've done, I'm not great at push-ups or anything, but if you give yourself like 2 minutes and see how many you can do, it will really hurt. It will really, really hurt. And so it's not just a fitness question. It's going to be like a question of will at the end of whether you can make it.
Well, who is better at that? What do you think? The world champion or the creator of the Pro Chess League?
Oh, Magnus is going to hurt Greg so bad. His ego is going to be just crushed. Rook h5 by the Hammer. I like it a lot. Very simple and strong. Positions like this, right, like the rook on h8, it's really a question of, like, can he be utilized? And so it's cool that he's both, threatening g5 and touching e5. And, of course, the whole point of g5 at some point is to mate with rook h2. So that looks great.
Sorry, but I think Greg doesn't agree with you in the chat.
Well, I think they could do that. They could raise money for charity or something, because people will come to watch that.
People would love that live stream of the push-up contest.
Yeah.
I love it. So the Gnomes, they still want to win this match, or at least survive today's match. But as we mentioned, they need to score, for the tie, they need to score 2.5 points in 3 games. One is Hammer. So let's evaluate quickly the positions, and then we will come back for analyzing.
Okay, and I'll just say, Ghosh just played knight d6, and the Hammer has a great position here. Like, he can play e5 now, and he's just going to, which he does, and he's just going to win the pawn on d6. So let's call that as being very clear advantage for the hammer there.
Okay, so that means the remaining two boards only need a point and a half.
So where is...
That's Livestrong,
Right.
Agdenstein.
Where's my famous Livestrong? There he is. Oh, you know...
And I'm confused. No, Livestrong is not. I've been confused the whole time. Yeah, it was not Agdenstein's hand. I'm sorry.
But you know what? Livestrong has been various different people. Livestrong was also Hansen at one point.
And now...
And now it's Mr. Ellum.
Is it possible that one username is just... It's like a ghost username and appears from time to time.
But this game is also important, right? And Mr. Ellum has to do...
Abhishek Kelkar.
Yeah. So
Ellum Abdulf playing on board 4 for the Norway Gnomes. He needs to at least make a draw in this game against a higher rated opponent. Much higher rated opponent, to be honest. 500 rating points according to the September ratings.
And this one actually is his best chance that we've seen today, right? He's not down a piece.
Yeah.
But honestly, it looks difficult for him because the black's pawns are just faster than white's here, and there's chances for black to create mating nets.
Yes, this is a dangerous position, and this game could decide the match in favor of the Mumbai movers.
Yeah, like, you know, a lot of people will dogmatically like the bishop, but it's just a question of speed here, right?
Yeah.
The black's pawns are so much faster, and the mate possibilities are really severe.
Shall we just quickly have a look at Agdenstein's positions to see if it actually makes sense to focus on board 4, if the other boards are winning already for the Gnomes or the movers are making it?
So if he's not Livestrong, what name has he decided to go by?
I can't really pronounce it. I think it's Gruk.
Uh-oh. It starts with a G?
Yeah.
Gruk Jr. Gruk Jr.
Gruk Jr. But
yeah.
I'm pretty sure that last time I didn't see him under this name. So
no, I'm telling you, they're switching it up. They're switching it up who they are. Well, and you know, let me do a pronunciation. You know, you've got the Indian pronunciations, and I have got the Norwegians ones.
Yeah.
And I think the way it sounds is Gruk. You like that? Gruk. It sounds very.
Jesse.
Yeah.
I love that. For today, you guys see that we came very well prepared because Jesse practiced the Nordic pronunciations, and I've done with the Asian, especially Indian names. So
yeah. And you know, Gruk is showing up with Hallor, and they're getting pretty mean here. I like Agdenstein's position here a lot, right? His knight is very strong. His rook is more active. His king is better, and the knight, I assume, is going to land on f4. And the poor bishop on d1, no one knows. No one knows what's going on with that bishop.
That's true. So it's looking very good for Agdenstein and Hammer. And once again, Ellum. All eyes on Ellum. Or Abhishek Kakar, depending on who are you rooting for. But in this case, it would be a miracle if the Gnomes can make it. 3.5 points out of 4. That's what they needed for the tie.
They're looking pretty... Well, it all comes down to the kid then, doesn't it? It all comes down to the kid.
I think so.
Because I think Agdenstein, let's say he has a clear advantage here. The Hammer has a clear advantage in his game. Agdenstein's position, by the way, he's got a real question right now because if he plays knight f4, which is, I assume, his original intention, then white just plays h4, and there's nothing... Well, it's, you know, black is still better, but we don't want to free white from his terrible h3 pawn. And that's what Puranik is going for right away. He doesn't know what else to do, so he's just going to try to play h4.
Yeah.
And maybe, you know...
Sorry, I was just going to say that I think Ellum's position is getting... very some, at least, to say mildly.
Yeah. All right, let's take a look. There's Mr. Ellum. I like that name, Mr. Ellum. He's like when the other guys are named Gruk and Haldor, you know, he's just like a very dignified young man. Ellum. Mr. Ellum Rees. Okay. Yeah, well, it's like we said, right? The king is coming in, and Mr. Ellum's going to get mated. Right?
Yeah.
I don't know what else is going to happen besides mate here. Maybe you got to try bishop d5, but, you know, he tries rook f7. I assume king e3 now. Very pleasant position for black.
Oh, and while we were having very close look at the movers versus Gnomes match, the Dynamites beat the Oslo Trolls, the other Norwegian team. So it's already 8.5, 5.5 in favor of the Delhi Dynamites.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Huge.
And the Armenia Eagles are just 1 point away from winning the match against their Magicians. So, whoa, Jesse, we need to look at all the games.
Yeah. Okay. Where should we start?
Can
we look at Beck again?
Oh,
you know what?
This is the games that are still going on, because it might change, like the match between the Armenia Eagles and the Magicians.
Can we look at your kid, your favorite kid?
Oh, please.
He's playing Jan Elvis. And Jan is playing this interesting English setup, which I think would suit him against this kid. And, you know, everybody should know Elvis, you know, was once top 100, top 20 in the world at one point, you know, back in the 80s. Very strong player.
Yes, yes.
And I've played him several times. Really a joy to play against.
How's your score against him?
I did win once. Couple draws, and then when I was a kid, he beat me like every time.
Oh, that doesn't count if you were a kid.
Yeah, oh, it counts. It counts. He didn't forget, and I didn't forget either.
What do you think, Jesse, if we come back to this game a little bit later? Because I see that the Gnomes are about to finish, and according to Greg, they might not lose the match. So
okay.
Is Elam surviving? Does that mean that he's doing all right?
Okay, and I'll say that the hammer has won.
Okay.
And, all right, so let me find Mr.
And Agdenstein is winning, I think. At least it's looking very good. But looking as good as it was before. Stronger pieces, domination. So it's going to take time, but I think it's his kind of position. Elam
is lost. Elam is totally lost.
So it was fake news that I got in the chat.
I mean, let's just say it's not completely over, but just, well, you know, maybe Elam can pull out some kind of something here. But a move like King F3 looks very strong to me, because you're threatening Rook B1, and you don't need to worry about Bishop D5, because you've got Rook B1, King H2, G3 check, King H3, Rook H1 mate. And, you know, just in general, at least my intuition here is that, you know, black should be able to find a net, but he does have to find it, yeah. And actually, here's a thing for the kid, is that if King F3, which does seem like the most natural, maybe he should try Bishop D1 check. It's ugly, though, but it's still, like, maybe you can dream about, like, the king moves, and then you just violently run your c-pawn, and you hope for the best.
So you see at least a glimpse of hope for...
Yeah, so people were right. There's a glimpse here. Absolutely, there's a glimpse of hope. Yeah, let's stay on this for a second. So yeah, Kelkar needs to find a nice move here. And Bishop D5 as well as C6 are Mr. Elam's hopes of surviving. And I'm just going to say, like, if H4, then I assume Bishop D5. So he does play King F3. And Mr. Elm has to debate between bishop d5, which I think loses outright, rook f7, also a thought, and bishop d1.
So you see some chances after bishop d1 because black cannot play king g3.
So he plays rook. He plays rook f7. Yeah.
If king g3, what does he want to do?
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, this is bad news. I mean, okay, let's just try c6 and see if there's some chance with c6.
By the way, if you guys are on Twitter, you should check out the latest tweets with the hashtag ProChess. That's the hashtag of the ProChess League. And there's a clip of Jon Ludvig Hammer celebrating his victory. Maybe not enough for the team. Might not be enough for the team.
So here's a big moment. Let me ask you if you think this variation is going to work. So white just played c6. Could black play h4, white plays c7, h3, and if queen, c8, then h2, and we got him. We got the kid.
Oh.
So knight g5 instead. That also looks strong. That very simple and strong. Much simpler than my variation, because now we're just threatening knight f3. c7, not the right move, because now just knight f3. And he does it even simpler. He plays rook b1, knight f3.
Yeah.
So that's it.
So it's over. The movers beat the Gnomes. Vichy Anand's team beats Magnus Carlsen's team.
Oh, man. And you know, when you lose like that, the only thing you can really do is do a lot of push-ups. And so Magnus Vikanze is probably just furiously practicing his push-ups. And you know, it's a problem because if he goes in tomorrow to play in Vikanze and his chest is so sore and it's so tight because he's been practicing for the challenge with Greg, he could, you know, he might blow his tournament, and he's playing beautifully. So be careful with the push-ups, you know. That'll hurt you.
Jesse, what did you do to Magnus? And he also has those nice shirts with the sponsor's name on, so he must be careful about not ripping it.
That's true. If he gets too swole, he just burst out of his shirt.
Like Hulk.
They would take away his sponsorship, and all kinds of terrible things would happen. Okay.
Well, we are sorry for the Gnomes. Congratulations to the Mumbai Movers. Both Indian teams beat the Norwegians today. Good day for the Indian teams, even without their players from Gibraltar. So those that are participating in Gibraltar.
Yeah. But how about we go back to your favorite 13-year-old?
Oh, please.
Yeah. So, you know, one thing that Greg gets on me about is he doesn't like draws, and he doesn't like endgames. He thinks they're boring. He also doesn't like slow chess. So me and Greg have a fight. You know, we have a fight, and I love boring positions like we've got going on right now. Just my favorite thing in the world. And Jan is up a pawn here. Very pleasant position for Jan. And Jan is really, oh man, he can really work you over in positions like this. So I don't know, I would say clear advantage here for Jan. The kid has some hopes of like trying to grip on the b4 square. But it should, you know, ultimately, this is either winning or clear advantage. I can't quite decide. Yeah, very pleasant. And let's think about this. So now that the Gnomes are done for, and Delhi has won its match, right? It turns out that this game with Elvis is one of the big matches that's going on right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the Estonia horses. And, you know, Elvis was here forever, and kind of as an unfair thing, he always got called a Russian. You know, he always hung out with the Russians, and he spoke Russian, so the American players were all like, oh, he's a Russian. But no, the guy wasn't a Russian. He was Estonian.
Oh.
And here he is. He's playing for his home Estonian squad.
Mm-hmm. against the youngest grandmaster in the world, who is on my fantasy team. Guys, let us know on Chess.com and on Twitch if you have a fantasy team too. Every week you can make up your dream team and see how they score in the Pro Chess League.
And Elvis just played a great move here. Simple and strong, knight d7. I don't see how the kid defends the pawn there on b6.
Oh, Nodirbek.
Right, so white has the better king. He's up a pawn. He's got the better knight. It looks bad. And black has a back rank weakness. Oh yeah, this is over, right? Now it's over.
Mm-hmm. For the team, that means, well, they are getting close to the 8.5 score that they need. The Estonia horses and the Armenia Eagles, well, 1 point away still. We need to check how those games are developing.
Right. Okay, so which game should we look at? How about Manukian?
Which one would you like?
Can we look at Manukian against Raimanis?
Yes.
Wait, is that what you meant though? The Armenia match, right?
Yeah,
or did you mean something else? Okay, good.
Yeah, I'm just always confused about the pronunciation, so I was smiling because of that.
Why don't you pronounce it for us? You pronounce it. You're really good with those names.
No. I don't know actually. I haven't practiced all the names. I was focusing on the Indian players. So
right.
I must admit that I think it's Artak Manukian, and the other I think you should pronounce.
I said Raimanis. Well, how would you say it?
I'm not sure. Maybe someone from Riga can confirm how to pronounce. Ritvars Raimanis? Or something along the line. But we need to look at this game and the rest of his team, because the Armenia Eagles only need to score 1 more point to win the match against the Magicians.
That's right. I think Armenia is going to be a big contender too in this field.
They won the Challengers. If you remember, they won the Challengers. The qualifier. I call them Challengers, but there was this qualification tournament to get into the Pro Chess League.
Right.
So many teams wanted to sign up. They had to qualify.
Yeah.
They won that tournament, but last week they lost their match. So it's there are still many rounds, of course, but they didn't start as well as they wanted to. They lost to the Oslo Trolls last week.
Right. And but that was because they were undermanned last week, right?
Probably.
Yeah. Well, I like Raimanis's aggression here. He's got this fancy rook on g3. However, Manukian just played. I'm self-conscious about how I'm pronouncing his name, but he played a move I like, which is f5, and the point is simply to say I'm going to connect my queen on e7 to the king side of g7, and I'm going to block the bishop on b1. And in fact, maybe Raimanis regrets bishop b1 a little bit, because now he's got a lot of funny pieces all of a sudden, right? The rook on a1 is funny. And now he plays another move that's strange to me, which was knight d3. And I'm not sure what he's trying to do. All of black's pieces on the light squares look good. So, there's many moves that he could play, but the simple knight c4, for example, looks good.
Yes, I like that move. Just jumping in with the knights, improving black's pieces.
Yeah, and there's more than one thing. He could play king h8. There's a lot of good moves for the guy here.
How about the other boards? Just if we briefly look at if there's any Armenian already winning, or the opposite, if the Magicians are doing very well on the other boards, that would be good news for them.
Right. How about Petrosian's game against Meskov's?
Sure.
and very dynamic position. On first glance, it's very hard to say. It's all going to depend on how successfully Black can play D5 or C5. And my mind subconsciously said D5 because the first thing that came to mind is White could play
and
D5.
Is there D5, D5.
That's right, and it happens immediately. It looks very dangerous. Yeah, and so opposite color, and this is just better for White, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is just better because we're going to have long-term pressure against the king, and I don't think Black can ever evict our bishop on D5. Right, so we can solidify that guy in a number of ways and play for things maybe like F4, F5. Maybe also we have thoughts of Black has to be careful not to lose the D7 square. Lots to worry about for Black, right? Like E6 is also a worry at some point.
Yeah. Those of you guys worried about Magnus's team, this was not a knockout. At this stage of the Pro Chess League, they are collecting points and they need to qualify for the playoffs. So just by losing today's match, Magnus's team is not out of the competition. Don't worry. He will be back next week. I'm pretty sure that he will be playing when he doesn't have another tournament going on.
Right. And, you know, he did play, to his credit, right? He played on the last round, which was during the tournament as well. Right? So that was amazing. I didn't think he would do it, honestly. I think most players also wouldn't have done that. So that's really good sportsmanship. For White in this game with Meskov's, like, I don't know what Petrosian's going to do, but I think E4 is a good general move, not only to fix the bishop, but if you imagine that I've got E4, one dirty trick that I can imagine is bishop F7, rook F7, then E6, touching both the rook and the queen.
Nice, and taking on F7 with a check before capturing back the queen.
Right. Right, so that's some of the terrible threats that Petrosian has to deal with.
Yeah.
Very difficult, and you know, maybe Black could ideally hope to put his bishop on G7 or something, but I don't know how he gets it there. In a blitz game like this, I would, you know, think that Black playing a move like C4 would make sense, just to get out of there. He plays King H8. That's a sensible move, of course.
I like that. At least there's no bishop F7 anymore.
Right. And White has a number of good building moves here. E4, F4. Maybe also, like I said, trying to set up some kind of business where we try to land on D7. You know, so like rook D2 and rook D1 is a thought. A lot of nice choices.
So in terms of the match, how are they doing on all boards? Because in this match, just like in the match of the Estonian horses, so both the Armenia Eagles and the Estonian horses only need one more point to win the match. Can we just very quickly look at all those boards and see if there's anyone, either from the Estonian team or the Armenian team, having a winning position?
Okay, good. So, Onishuk is a game we should look at. And what is that situation? I guess I would say Onishuk looks a little bit better to me. He's playing the famous Hazangatin, by the way. That's a tough game to call, but I do like White better. What do you think about that one?
Oof. I do like White as well. I'm wondering if his advantage will be enough. It looks like a very pleasant advantage, of course.
Right. I kind of think that Hazangatin really needs... Well, it's very unpleasant. So, White could play now both A4, but also if he's worried about A4, A5, he could play Rook C5 first. He says, I'm not worried. I'm just going to play A4. And now, if you allow A5, I'm going to say you're lost. And if you play A5 yourself, then B5 and Rook C6 is going to be... You know that's coming. And the real bummer about rook c6 is then after rook c6, then I can play king c5. So that looks terrible.
So white is getting there.
Yeah. Hasankatin's a fighter, and he plays king b7. Onishuk just plays a5. And so, right, my assumption was that white was winning here because that pawn is so miserably fixed on a6. But maybe this is black's best practical chance, because at least now the rook can't invade so easily.
Yes, and in case of king c5, black wants to give a check and force the black king back to d4.
Right. I do think this is lost.
Still some chances to hold, but pleasant position for Onishuk.
Yeah.
What about his teammates?
Okay, which is the next
other
one?
horses.
The horses.
It's Gorozhanian versus Kanep, where I think I see a piece up for Kanep, which can be called a winning position. I believe so. That's bad news for their opponents. If Kanep is winning, then it's over for the Volga Stormbringers. Do you see the game?
No.
Gorozhanian Kanep. Or am I looking once again at an old game? Maybe it's my bad.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that.
No, sometimes I have more windows open than what I need. Wait a second. I'll check if there's another game by him. It's my bad if I call his previous game a win for now.
Oh, I do see Kanep.
Okay, no,
right.
I'm sorry. That was... But yeah. I'm confused.
Right. Yeah, that game's over. And...
Yes, Gorozhanian lost to Kanep. Garak has just confirmed. So that's it for the match, or was that already counted before?
I think that, I don't know what else. That's the only horse. That's the only horse game I see going on. Yeah. Something I would like Greg to do, actually. This would be hard, and this is
besides the push-up challenge.
This is even harder than the push-up challenge. But I would like, when I look at the games, to see a little horse or a little icon next to the people's names. It would just make it a little easier and fun to follow. But that's very hard. That's very hard to do.
It's already very nice that they have their logos and stuff. So we, of course, appreciate all the work that Chess.com has put into developing this platform.
Absolutely.
Just for the Pro Chess League. New website, ProChessLeague.com. You guys should check it out with all the information on the teams. So it's very, very much informative. And the Estonia horses won. So that was really the game that we looked at. It's 8.5 already. That means that Nodirbek's team lost if Estonia horses win, because Nodirbek is on the Volga Stormbringers. How was his game, by the way?
Let's take a look. He is still playing. And, Elvis is a beast, and Elvis is up 2 pawns. And if the kid plays king f5, he'd be mated in 1, so he says king f7. But this is completely lost, right? There's no hope here.
Yes.
King e5, very simple and strong. You guys, I'm telling you.
I feel bad about his first game still, when he was winning. Nodirbek had a winning rook endgame and he lost on time.
Yeah, that was strange.
Then he came back with a win. So he was actually playing very strong chess, and also against Onishuk, 2700 player, and Nodirbek, 13-year-old youngest grandmaster. He was playing for a win against the 2700. But now this game, really, experience prevails.
So let's actually go and look at this and look at how this affects the standings, right? So we've got First of all, Riga's going to need a miracle, basically, to pull this out today. And so Estonia, Delhi, and Mumbai won. And poor Norway is going to need, and Oslo are going to need some love to bring it back. But yeah, let's go ahead and let's pull up the standings just from last week. And so what does this mean for us?
Well, now the leaders will be the Estonian horses. They are the only ones to win both matches.
Yeah. And that means the field's wide open, right? It means like there's not a lot of players with two scores.
Yeah, just the Estonian horses, followed by the two Indian teams, Delhi Dynamite and Mumbai Movers, on 1.5 for both. But as Greg said in the chat, this first stage of the Pro Chess League consists of 9 rounds. So actually, it's not such a big deal if your team is not leading at the beginning. It will matter how they finish after 9 matches.
Right. And can you help us understand how are the playoffs going to work?
Sure. So for instance, now you see the colors. The top 4 teams would go to the playoffs. And the bottom 2 will be disqualified from the league. So it's not only about the top spots, but also about the bottom places. Those teams that finish on the bottom 2 places, they will be out from next year's Pro Chess League unless they qualify in a qualifying tournament.
Right. I think that's
And then the playoffs will be a knockout system.
I'm very happy about that development, by the way. I played years ago. I played in the Bundesliga, and it was so cool. You know, here I don't know what it's like. It's a little bit. Well, anyways, in America, I should explain. There's this terrible thing with American sports that you can be like baseball, basketball. You can be at the bottom of your division, and you still are allowed to play the next year. Right? It doesn't matter how bad you are. So it was so cool when I played in the Bundesliga, right? That if you lose, you go down. And it also means that if you're coming up, you know, you have a chance to go into the top league. And I really like that format for sports. And I'm really happy that Greg's doing it that way. It just makes things so much more exciting, right? Because it's not just the top, it's also the bottom.
Yes, I feel the same way about it. By the way, if we can switch back to the board, I think the game between Elvest and Nodirbek is over.
Yeah, so there we go.
Jan Elvest has beaten the youngest grandmaster in the world, Nodirbek Abdussatorov from Uzbekistan. But we will hear about this boy, I think, in the future as well. So watch out for Nodirbek in the Pro Chess League and in general. Now, as for our matches, do we still have any games going on?
We do. This is going to be the final matchup that we have is going to be the Riga-Armenia match, which it would be amazing if Riga pulled it out. It seems almost impossible, but it's still going on. And I'm looking at the game of Andriasyan. Oh, that was a good pronunciation. Andriasyan. And complete mess, but intuitively it looks like white at least has some interesting prospects. He's threatening rook g4 because the rook on f7's hanging. But, but black is up a pawn.
So he has just played rook e4, hasn't he?
Right.
What was that? That was a bishop. Okay, they traded bishops on e4.
Right.
Nice.
I'm assuming a move like rook d to d7. Just to hold everything. No, excuse me. The pawn on e6 is hanging. So there's 2 threats. There's rook g4, and there is rook or queen takes e6. Oh, that's exciting. Yeah. Now, one tricky business could be black plays e5. Looks really weird, right? And then white maybe could get away with rook takes g4. But even that, it's just total mess, isn't it?
Takes d4, yeah, it's a huge mess. Those of you who say that Andriasyan rings a bell, that you have heard of this name, but you don't remember from where, he won the World youth championships, World Junior Championship, I believe. So, and Tom Cantans, you must have seen him playing on Chess.com. He almost qualified for the Speed Chess Championship in one of the Tuesday qualifiers on Chess.com. So they are both very good players, and in this format with 15 minutes, I think they might be even stronger, even more dangerous.
Yeah, Cantans has a difficult choice to make. Besides e5, it's almost hard to figure out like what he does. He could also play rook e7, right? Rook e7 he could play. Of course, that's just the beginning of the party, though. I mean, rook e7, white could think about rook g4, fg, and bishop f6. So, black boldly plays knight f6.
I think that was suggested in the chat. So you guys play like a grandmaster, 2600 grandmaster.
And
how is this time situation? How can Andresian have 6.5 minutes versus 14 seconds?
Yeah, okay. So knight f6, he's just holding on. It's very dangerous for black, isn't it? The bishop on d4. Part of I think one reason my intuition didn't like knight f6 so much is now black, right, has lost the e5 square. It is true, though, that the rook is active. I mean, the knight is active on unlike a square like e4. White needs a good move here. Rook f5. Nice! Nice!
That's like a good move.
I had a feeling something was suspicious. That was a beautiful one. That might be that Greg should list that as like one of the contenders.
Move of the week.
Rook
takes f5. Although it's actually simple tactics if you look at the unprotected pieces and the g7 square.
Easy for you to say, Anna. Simple tactics. That was pretty good.
Wow. So that's it for this match again. The Armenia Eagles winning the match with this beautiful move. Rook takes f5. Zavin Andresian against Tom Cantans. 8.5 already, the score for the Eagles.
Beautiful, yeah. So that kind of sealed the deal.
It did. What a way to seal the deal.
And there we still have 2 games left. Helkumian is playing against Kovalenko, and I guess black is better, but it's not over yet by any stretch. Black basically has to mate white before the a-pawn queens.
That's true.
Yeah, so that game's fighting, but they're playing for pride now, right? They're playing for pride.
Yeah, but it depends on the communication between teams. In the last season, I saw teams that were like all the time connected, or they might even play from the same room. Other teams had no idea what was going on their teammates' boards, because they just so focus on their ones. They don't have time to look at the chat between the teammates. So who knows, that he might still think, Kovalenko might still believe that he can actually change the score of the match.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm sure. And, you're playing and you're enjoying it. And for sure, if you're black, this is just a pleasure, right? Because you're going to play f5 someday. Your king is safer. No one knows what the white pieces are doing. The bishop on b4 is a pawn,
Yes.
And the black queen is just waiting to come back. Very ambitious move from white, e4, and he's just trying to break it all open. And this is probably not going to work, but you might as well try when you're in this bit of grief here.
Yeah. Shout out to Thomas Randall. I see that he is here with us in the chat. Captain of the London Towers. They will play soon in the Central Division. And he's right that besides the pride and, of course, trying to do your best in the games, there are also personal prizes to pick up. So players have to fight for their teams and also for those nice prizes that are out there every week. By the way, the London Towers this week, Gavain Jones will be playing on board 1. He is also in Vaikanze playing the Tata Steel Masters, but he decided that today's rest day was a perfect day to make his debut in the Towers team this year.
Yeah, well, Gavain Jones, he was doing a lot of push-ups too after he lost to Magnus. That was really a bummer, you know. He did a lot of push-ups after that one.
Was he? You mean his games?
His game that he lost to Magnus and he was up a piece.
Oh no! Oh, that was such a pity. I felt so sorry for Gavain.
I have to say though, I saw the post-game interview and I thought he held it together really well. I'm sure he was really hurting inside, but he had the class to just, you know.
Yes, he went to the commentary and just discussed the game, even though he lost the winning position.
Right. I'm sure I would have been screaming. I know I would have been screaming. Because even if it hadn't been to Magnus, that's the kind of position you'd still just end up screaming about.
Exactly.
You know, he's so sad.
So that just shows what a nice person Gavain is and how balanced psychologically he still is even after losing.
Yeah, absolutely. Kovalenko's putting together a nice game. I'm going to guess it's going to be mate here, but he has to find something precise on this move because C8 is threatened to end. Queen E2. Oh, look at that. Queen E2, Queen F5. Excuse me. Excuse me. Hello. 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 So King F7. That could be move of the week too. That was a pretty good one.
And today we had 2 games on the F5 square. There was a beautiful move on the F5 square.
That's
Queen F5 here, Rook F5 in the previous game.
But unfortunately, Greg will never give this one. Oh, look at that. Queen H3. He's going for more. He's going for more.
Avoiding mate, threatening C8 queen. Now, what will black do about this? Nothing.
Well, he's going to play G4.
Wow.
He's going to play G4, right?
He can, but then check on H5 and queen with check.
You're right. Yeah, that's it. In fact, it's just mate. It's not a check, it's a mate. But what else? Yeah.
But that's game over. So, whoa, Queen F5. He's going for G4, but this is game over.
Oh, that was hard. That was a hard business there. I think that was our last game, right?
I believe so. Let's just review. We've got all the scores. Congratulations to the Armenian Eagles beating the Riga Magicians. It was a hard-fought match, just like every match of today. If we see the results, I don't think it reflects well how close all these matches were.
Yeah. I mean, Norway especially has got to be upset. It was just 1 point, and it could have gone either way.
Yes.
And
they needed 3.5 points just to save the match, but they almost did it. They almost got
did it. Yeah. And, you know, I don't know for sure, but my sense of Norwegian chess is like there's a bunch of talented juniors, and like Mr. Elam we'll probably see again. You know, we're going to see that kid again. And my sense is like Magnus is kind of nurturing them. I don't know if he teaches them, but he's like watching. He's watching them. So Mr. Elam was being watched by Magnus.
Like he's an inspiration, but he also joins their camp. So he goes there, he helps them. It's a nice atmosphere in their team.
Yeah.
And once again, just referring to those users that were claiming that, oh, Magnus didn't care, he didn't play because he doesn't care. It's not true. It's just that the Tata Steel Chess Masters is going on right now, and he wants to win the tournament. So he decided to focus on that on the last rounds. But I think he's very much devoted to his team.
Oh, absolutely.
And we will see him next week, I'm pretty sure.
Well, not only did he have to rest for the tournament, but he had to do some training, some push-up training. You know, and that involves a lot. It's not just push-ups. You got to run, and you got to lose a little weight. You got to do like weird exercise, because that's where Greg has his advantage. You know, because in CrossFit they make you do all this weird stuff. They like make you walk like a crab and like jump up and down and stick your tongue out. I'm serious. They make you do all kinds of really demeaning things. Yeah. And so I think like when you do all those weird motions, you get some weird strength inside you. You know, I think that's what Magnus is going to try to. He's going to need some of that to go up against Greg.
Let's bring up the standings. I think we have the standings updated already with the new results.
Okay, let me see if I can refresh this.
Some comments to you, Jesse.
All right.
The Chess.com chat from Greg that I will not read out.
So there we have it with the horses. And I'm sorry I lost some of their letters, but there they are. And the horses are now in the lead with 19 points. Delhi's next, and so only Estonia's got a perfect score. And if the whole situation were to end today, Riga and Volga would go down.
Yes.
They would go down. Correct. Yeah. So very exciting. And, you know, I think Armenia and Oslo are very much in it. Both those teams seemed very good. And, of course, Armenia, I think, was just handicapped last week. And this week, I think Norway was handicapped.
Yeah.
Right? So those teams will definitely be back in it. And I would say for the long haul, I still think that Norway's the favorite, even though they lost today.
Yeah, it's really tough, especially since, well, they were missing Magnus. But on the other hand, if we look at their opponent's team, they also had a big handicap, and that was Vichy Anand not playing.
Right, right.
And their board two, you know who is their board two normally? He's called Vidit, and he's also in Vaikanze.
That's right, yeah.
So I think today's match was fair in a way that both teams were lacking their best players.
Mm-hmm.
It could have turned out differently on another day with other players, but the two teams are very strong. I guess the two will qualify for the playoffs, and we will see them play against each other once again.
Right. And also, I guess we could preview. Tell me we've got a whole nother thing coming up, right?
That's true. Let's have a look at the pairings for the upcoming Central Division.
So I'm going to pull that up here. And I'm going to get rid of this one. And I'm going to grab it. So we're going to go Central, right?
Yeah, guys, don't go anywhere. I see some good buys in the chat.
We just want to talk about it.
So this was the Eastern Division, but it's not over at all. The Central Division will start very soon. And then the other two divisions. So 4 divisions in total, the whole day here on Chess.com. And you must be watching it. Where are you going?
Right. We're going to pull this up. And
I think I see your whole screen.
I know. But here I've got it. Here I've got it. So boom, there is our screen there with the updated standings for the Central. And tell us who's doing the commentary later for the Central.
The Central Division will be hosted by Jan Shahade and Danny Ranch. So
that's going to be exciting.
You shall stay for Jan's and Danny's commentary.
Yeah.
Some of the pairings, do you also have the pairings there, or shall I just read them out?
Go ahead. Yeah, I can. Right, I have the pairings. Let's go pairings.
Yeah, in the meantime, I can just name them while you're busy.
I've got it. It's pulled up right here. Oh, no, This is just our section. So I would have to go somewhere else. But go ahead and read it off to us, and I'll go back to the standings.
Sure. So the Central Division has 2 English teams, the London Lions and London Towers. 2 French teams that will face each other today, actually, the Cannes Blockbusters and the Marseille Migrants. And then, of course, we have the North region covered by the Stockholm Snowballs and the Reykjavik Puffins. The Puffins were last year's crowd favorite.
Yeah.
The Reykjavik Puffins.
That's
and
right.
the Ljubljana Turtles also play in the Central Division. Now, the Puffins, in their team, they won last week's Game of the Week. It was Bragi Thornfinson beating Etienne Baccarat. Beautiful game. You can check it out on YouTube, analyzed by Zibit. Just go to prochessleague.com and you will have the link to the game analyzed. Game of the week. The move of the week was by Magnus Carlsen, knight takes f6. Game of the week by the Puffins, beating Bragi beating Baccarat. And well, this week they have it also not so easy, the match. Reykjavik Puffins against the London Towers, Snowballs facing the Ljubljana Turtles, and their handles are pretty easy, by the way, just the Ninja Turtles, the 4 of them.
Cool. Well, you know, I think we were talking before about underdogs and overdogs, and the underdog I really do root for is Iceland. And imagine if they're going to win the World Cup in soccer and the Pro Chess League this year. Imagine if that happened. Oh man, really amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's going to be a beautiful matchup. And I've heard what people have told me is that the French teams are very strong.
They are. They are very strong. And it's that today Maxime Vacher-Lagrave will not play, but he's also, of course, on the team of the Migrants.
Yeah.
And he is the captain. But I believe that we are now ready for the Central Division. Let me just get a confirmation on that, which means that Jesse and I will say goodbye. It's been a pleasure to stream for you, Jesse. It was so much fun commentating with you.
It was fun, yeah.
Push-up challenge that we will both watch out for by Greg and Magnus.
All right. Thank you, everybody. And thank you, Anna.
See you.
Bye.